And hello again, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of My Isolation podcast and the very last episode of season one because apparently podcasts have got to have seasons now. Apparently, I don't know.
Have we been renewed for a season 2, Connor?
Yeah, we have been renewed for season two.
Oh, yeah, I think you mean 13 seasons.
Yeah, 13 seasons, definitely.
Wow. This is proudly
Yeah,
sponsored by the Fox Network.
yeah, exactly. Well, technically Disney now because Disney owns Fox.
Well, yeah, technically true.
Yeah, we're owned by the House of Mouse. Though
Oh,
Mickey
yeah.
Mouse,
Yeah, I
he's
was going to say.
he's public domain now. Apparently, they've been making horror.
Well, it's specifically the version from Steamboat Willie, so from a very specific era of Mickey Mouse's domain, is now part of the public domain. There's
Yeah,
a few other characters that have also had the same treatment, but it just means that people are just going to make terrible horror movies based around that specific character.
yeah, I can't wait for that. The Mickey
there's
Mouse.
already there's already a few been announced, so don't worry about it,
Oh yeah,
folks.
they're making a sequel to the Winnie the Pooh horror film from last year.
Why? It was terrible. Why?
It actually made a profit. It surprisingly
Well,
made.
yeah, because everybody was like, "Oh my god, we know Winnie the Pooh. That's funny. Let's watch a Winnie the Pooh horror film." And then they probably came out of it going, "That's terrible. Why did we waste our time with that? That sequel's not going to make any money."
No, we'll
Ugh.
see. We'll see. But yeah, as you can tell, Alex is back.
Hello, it's
Welcome to
me.
welcome to New Year. Welcome to 2024,
They did.
Alex.
They let me out of 2023. I'm into 2024.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Before we begin, Connor, do you have any New Year's resolutions this year? Because I've got one.
Uh, well, I've got one. I'll let you say yours first, and I'll say.
Mine's a pretty good one. It's I'm going to turn 30 this year. That's my New Year's resolution.
Oh wow, really?
Yeah, that's
Nice.
a pretty easy one. I think I'll be able to do that.
Yeah, mine is actually somewhat related to today's topic. Mine is for my New Year's resolution. I just want to live my life, and that's literally it.
Well,
Because
that's
in
a good thing to do.
yeah, because in 2023 I was not able to live my life because in 2023 I was living in London, and
Ooh,
we're gonna go into that today. So obviously the podcast is called My Isolation Podcast, and we do normally talk about films and TV shows and other media stuff around here. But today we're going to go a little bit more in like more raw, I guess, more slightly more personal, but not
hmm.
completely personal. Well, we'll see how personal we get from.
Well, we'll talk about some films as well at the end. But yeah, this one's definitely
Yeah,
more about I would say a sort of general sort of
yeah,
you unpacking an experience that you've had to deal with last year, as well as maybe some advice for some other people who might consider moving down to London.
yeah,
Which by the end of this, you might not want to.
yeah. Yeah, my advice is well, we'll say, I'll save my advice if you for the very end. But
Yeah.
yeah, so first of all, how we go this out? I've got about 10 bullet points to get to. We'll go in depth in them. I'll talk about my experiences. Alex, you'll throw your 2 cents in there. You're essentially the my emotional support for all this. If
I am. I'm like one of those cool dogs.
yeah, yeah, exactly, yeah. But yeah, let's talk about this is the truth about living in London. At least from my perspective, anyway. I know there's people out
London
there
uncovered.
yeah. Before we get started, let me just quickly say right now, I know there's people out there who live in London who enjoy it. If you still do, all power to you. I'm glad you've been able to build a life for yourself. But unfortunately, from my experience, I did not enjoy living in London, and
Hmm.
we will go into that right now.
Yeah.
But the first,
Yeah. Oh,
oh,
sorry. You go
no,
first.
no, you go next. Don't worry.
Ah, all I was going to really say is just one thing we should say is that London is a place for a very specific kind of person.
Yes.
If you are a person that wants to get a specific career that is only available in London and you care about nothing else, that's what you want to do. You're not bothered about where any of your money goes apart from having a place to live there and then working. London's perfect for you, mate. Move down. You'll love it. But if you are any other kind of person, you're going to really struggle.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. That's how I would sum it up. So let's get into the first bullet point. The first bullet point being, how did we get here? So, or rather, how did I get there? So basically, I did my bachelor in film and TV production. I did it in Grimsby, and that was I liked Grimsby at first, but then I moved back for a year back in 2017 to 2018. I didn't really like it. I think Grimsby's one of those towns where if you like move there, like if you're a student basically, and if you live there like as a student, it's fine. But if for whatever reason, like if you live there generally, the cracks start to show basically. So I moved up to York for my masters, but I really loved York, so I stayed there for 4 more years. My graduation for my masters got delayed because of COVID, and ended up getting delayed till 2022. And then at that point, I was like, you know what, I think it's time to leave York behind and get to the next stage. So I was debating whether to do London or Bristol, and I ended up going with London mainly because a lot of my friends moving down there. I'm friends with a lot of lawyers, so a lot of those guys were moving down there, and I thought, yeah, this will be nice. It'll be fun. I'll live with two of my mates, and it'll be really fun and really good. Um, and I was getting a lot of interviews for a lot of entry level positions, traineeships, that kind of stuff. I was like, feeling really positive about it. I was feeling really great about it. Um, that's pretty much how we got here. And but then the first hurdle kind of hit, and this is where we get to
Mm.
bullet points number two. Trying to find a place in London is like one of the hardest things you'll ever have to do in your life if you ever consider moving down there.
Mm. Yeah, I've heard that for quite a lot of people, um, from who've lived in London, that finding a place to live there, like, relatively affordable is it's pretty much impossible these days, and it only seems to be getting worse as well, which is what's disheartening.
Exactly. And from our experience, the problem with it is that because obviously I've lived up north, I've lived in New York for like a good couple of years now, and other places up north, I find renting up north that the process of actually getting to get to a place and stuff like that you want to rent is so much more easy up north than it is down south. With up north, I've literally had like shed houses, like the current apartment I'm in now. This took me a day to sort out, literally a day, and like that's like that was like going on spare room and just looking up stuff and looking for a flat and spare room and finding a place and everything. That was really quick and really easy. The landlord was really helpful. In London, it takes it. We started looking in May 2022. We did not find a place until November of 2022. Uh,
Damn.
Now, to be fair, that was a bit of a dilemma, because we had two places sorted out. The first place was in Canary Wharf, and that took the entirety of the summer of 2022. Now, bear in mind, this was the first proper summer, no COVID, no restrictions, none of that stuff. This was the first real summer where we could go out and do stuff, and I was too busy trying to sort out an apartment in Canary Wharf, and we did that. And then it was going to be four of us, and then one person who will name nameless, but will be referred to as Dick of the Year 2022, dropped out last minute. And by last minute, I mean the day we were supposed to move in because they showed up, they saw the place, they didn't like it. So, like, yeah, I'm dropping out, lads. See ya. And that was it. So, and this was like a few days before I was supposed to move out on my last place in York in like like 5 days' time. So I was just a little bit like, what the fuck? Like, why are you like, why,
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
I have like a lot of like big fears in life, and one of those I'd say my second biggest fear is being homeless. Like that is just like I'm not going to say what my number one biggest fear is, but my second biggest fear is definitely being homeless. And within those 4 days, that very nearly could have become a reality,
Yeah.
uh, because like and luckily for us, we got our rent and deposits back. The landlord was nice. She was nice enough to give it back to us. And
Mm.
I just feel quite sorry for her too, because I feel like, like having the fact she thought like, oh yeah, I'm gonna get these new tents in, it's gonna be great, and then they drop out last minute because yeah, and because and there was I mean, like there were some problems with the apartment when he got there. There was some
Mm.
but like he was like, oh yeah, there's no smoke alarms installed, but they were being installed on that day. So it's a little bit like, well, clearly they've known about that for a while. And he claimed that there was damp and mold, but we didn't really. He tried sending us pictures and stuff. We didn't really see anything, so we just felt like maybe he walked in, didn't think it was for him, and maybe he thought like, oh yeah, I'll just drop out and move to Reading or something like that because that's what he was talking about
Yeah.
doing. Which
A general note I'll just point out for people in general is that this can happen anywhere, obviously.
mm,
It's something that I've experienced as well, not to the
yeah,
degree that you've experienced it, but, like, when there was a time when I was moving out of uni, when I was, like, looking for a place, and
mm,
I went through probably about 5 different people who all had different plans and were changing their minds, and I think that's fine, as
yeah,
long as you give people proper notice in advance and you understand, that Yeah, that kind of thing can happen, but in your case, it's really frustrating that it was a day before, and then it would have to be in one of the most expensive cities in the world
Yeah.
as well.
It wasn't even the day before, it was the day we were
Oh,
supposed
sorry,
to
the day of,
the
sorry,
day the
yes.
pregnancy was supposed to start, he was like, "Oh, yeah, I'm dropping out, lads, see ya." And it's like, "Really? Now?" Out of all
Mm,
the days.
yeah,
Um
not an ideal scenario.
It was just yeah, it was not an ideal scenario like at all. It was just, and then I had to move back in with my parents for 2 months, which was fine. I didn't mind that. And then we had to spend another. It was I think the thing that's frustrated me the most was just it was just the amount of time that was wasted. Like I obviously, like you said, this could happen anywhere, but for London particularly, like the amount of time it took us to sort a place out because the way London works. I mean, I don't know if the North does this. I know that the South does this. But there's this system called the open rent system. I don't know if you're familiar with that, Alex.
Not necessarily, no.
So the open rent system is basically where you give the estate agency, or I guess I think it's either the agency or the landlord. It could be either one of those. But basically, you give them temporary access to your bank account so they can access it, look into it.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
and the reason why they do that is because they claim that it's a quicker process. Even though I've had apartments and shared houses in York where like we've done the more traditional process of references and statements and stuff like that,
Yeah, I mean,
and
I don't think that's used up here, as
yeah,
far as I'm aware of.
and that's taken us about like a day to sort out. Like not even, do you know what I mean? Like not, like
Mm.
literally a day to sort it
Yeah,
out.
that's what it takes, yeah.
That's all. Like literally all it takes. I think my theory on why a lot of estate agencies down south do it, and again, this is just a theory. This is not a official confirmation. This is just a theory I have. A rent theory. This is a rent theory, as Matt Pat would say. If he did his channel on housing, I guess. But my theory is the reason why my theory that why that could be possibly done is possibly due to the fact that because they claim it's a faster way of processing it, and because we chose to do the traditional system that took ages to sort out. So my theory is that they do it because they know that most people are probably going to pick the more traditional system and not open rent system, because
Yeah.
why would you want someone looking having access to your bank account like that? Is just too
I think,
dodgy.
yeah, it's definitely used as a
Yeah,
deterrent more than anything because
yeah,
London, like a lot of these big cities in general, like especially in Europe, I'm not sure how it works really in America. They like the idea of like the city center or like roughly the actual center of the city being occupied by people with relative wealth. So like whether that that can range from being like a professional like a lawyer, for instance, to a multimillionaire oligarch. And they prefer the idea of like people who do working class jobs, as it were, living on the outskirts and having to travel in.
mm,
And then as a process, that means then that the city centre is more sort of in their mind, more sort of I'm trying to think of the right word for it, like I don't know, like relatively easier to handle. And I don't know, it's just something that I've noticed with a lot of European cities. Like Paris does it as well. They prefer the idea of it being like that. So I think they do that because it stops people trying to get places in the city centre.
yeah. I mean, that does sound quite. That sounds really terrible, to be honest. Like, why would you want to
It
block someone?
it's really common now,
Yeah,
unfortunately, because they want what they view as desirable people living in the cities,
yeah,
professionals, as it were,
mm,
in these big cities, and that's the result of London just being a professional city, as it were,
yeah,
where a lot of those industries, like creative industries, for example, like you were trying to gain access to, Connor, are
yeah.
mainly centered around London. I mean,
Mm,
there's a couple more cities in the UK in general that are creative cities as well, but London is the go-to one, generally speaking.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. I do also think as well, like just to finish off my theory, I do think that the reason why they do it is
Mm,
so that they can, because they know people are going to do the traditional system, because no one's going to have let someone access your bank account, and then that way
yeah,
they can keep the application open in case a more suitable candidate comes along,
yeah,
and they're
and
like,
that's definitely feeds into what I'm saying as well, where
yeah,
it's like, yeah,
exactly, yeah,
what they view as a desirable candidate, aka somebody
mm,
who earns quite a lot of money a month, so
yeah,
that if they do increase the rent or if they need to make any like sudden changes to the property, that they can then just suddenly be like, oh well, I don't have to worry about them not being able to pay it. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And then it's
Mm.
like, well, if you're worried about paying for the upkeep of a place, you probably shouldn't have bought a property in the first place that you can't handle. That's
Yeah.
the way I feel about it anyway, but that's not really what the podcast is about, so I'll let you finish, sorry.
No, that's all right. Yeah, and that's yeah. So that's so yes, that took up a lot of time. That was just it was just mainly because again we did the more traditional system rather
Mm,
than the open rent shit. And then like that would just took up so much fucking time. That took the entirety of summer of 2022. The entire summer that I could have spent like doing literally anything else because it's the was the first proper summer without any, like I said before, like without any COVID or
mm,
restrictions or anything like that stuff that we had in 2020 and parts of 2021. And I just spent most of it just trying to save money to get a apartment in London and trying to get an apartment in London sorted out. And then, it's finally sorted out. It took the entire summer. And then one guy decided, oh, yeah, I'm going to drop out last minute. And by last minute, I mean the day of the tenancy. So bye, guys. And it's like, now we have to spend another 2 months sorting out another apartment. It didn't take as long as the first one, but it's still again that's 2 more months that we have to spend finding another place. And it's just compared to how I've had places up north where again it's taken me like a day to sort stuff out. Like not even like not like the longest time I think the longest place that took a while to sort out for me up north would have been, I guess, my let's see, my second shed house in York, which
mm.
but that took like a week. And even then, like I messaged the state agency, and they were like, "Oh yeah, they all they did was send me a list of things I needed, and I got those list of things ready in like a day." And then they're like, "Okay, you're moving in next week." And then that's it, and then that was it. It took a day to sort out. Like, and even then, the only reason that was long was because I had to move in the next week. But even then, like again, like my current place, this place took me again another day to sort out. I just messaged the landlord, we got in touch, we started chatting, and then we arranged for me to move in the next week. And it was just like, you know what I mean? Like it's just the
Mm.
fact that it took and the problem is as well for a lot of Londoners as well because I was watching. Do you watch the Joe? Is it Politics Joe podcast at all, or the Politics Joe YouTube channel?
Oh, I know of Politics Show, but I don't
Yeah,
listen to, like, their podcasts or anything like
yeah.
that, but yeah, I'm aware of
Mm.
what they do.
Yeah, I mean, they've had like, I mean, there was one the main guy on the channel. I can't remember his name because I'm terrible with remembering people's names on the spot, unless it's written down somewhere. Um, where he basically was talking about how he had friends who had to like who were struggling to get a place, who've had to move out of London because they're struggling really fucking badly because the cost of living crisis is
Oh,
just
yeah, yeah, it's getting
ridiculous.
even it's really genuinely getting even worse, like, people are just
So much worse.
moving out, but that's kind of
Mhm.
the that then leads to a bigger problem that's like, well, if no one's gonna live there, then what's the point in having all that industry down there?
Exactly.
You
Yeah.
can't staff the jobs, and then it's like, well, shit, man, what are you gonna
Mm.
do?
Yeah, exactly. And then it's like, and he was talking about how like there's even been like times when like he's had friends who've had to pay like deposits, but like not deposits to keep a flat, a
No.
deposit to view a flat.
I mean, that's ridiculous.
Like that is just that like to me
That's
that is just
insane.
that's just theft. Like that is just sorry, but like you shouldn't have to pay a deposit to view a
I
flat.
think
Like
I wonder what that is though. Is that the rent? Is that the owner of the property, or is that the estate agent? Because both
mm,
of them can be equally crooked sometimes.
yeah,
And I think the
exactly.
idea of paying a deposit down to view a flat is, or like even a place in general, is ridiculous.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
in a lot of places now, they've gotten rid of agency fees because they are just like, you just can't expect people to move into a property and then pay not only the first extra on the first rent a month, but
yeah,
also a deposit and then agency fees on top of it. I mean, you're looking at nearly double what you're paying just for the first month alone.
yeah.
And it's like that's ridiculous.
Mm.
But yeah, yeah, who knows, man?
Yeah, and it's just yeah, and that's kind of the first problem with London. Trying to find a place anywhere it is just bad. Like it is just really
We should point out that there probably is some places in London that are really nice and probably quite cheap, and you could probably find it.
yeah,
But the chances of you finding that like within like even a year is slim to none. You
yeah,
have to be willing to wait out patiently for a long time to get that.
mm,
And then if you think about it, most people who live in those places aren't going to want to move out.
yeah, exactly, yeah,
Simple as that, really.
Nah, yeah, pretty much, yeah. I mean, yeah, it's terrible how long it takes as well. Like, it shouldn't. I'm sorry, but like, trying to find a place should not take you. If you're renting, anyways, it shouldn't take you as long as it took us. Like, it should take. It should
No,
take
and I think
more
that's
than a
what's
month.
crooked, isn't it? Like, and what
Yeah,
makes the whole thing feel particularly bad, and
mm,
then leads into like the place you did actually get, doesn't it? Really,
yeah,
and then the
yeah, and
problems
then
you had with that place.
oh yeah, we'll get into. I will get into problems with the place that we
Oh
did get.
yeah,
That's going to be item number
I don't know.
bullet point number 6.
Ooh, number 6.
As well. So we'll get into that. But trust me. So yeah, we did find a place in East Finchley, and we'll get into the problems with that place. But yeah, we'll get into problems with that place later on. But let's get on to the third bullet point, and that's dangerous city because. I mean, a lot of people have heard the stories about how dangerous London can be, but I think when you're visiting it, like when I've done in the past, you don't really think about how dangerous it can be. Like it's there in your mind, but you don't really think about it. But it's not until you move there and you live there that you're like, oh no, this place can actually get proper. It
Oh
can get
yeah, yeah, yeah.
like it's genuinely it generally is quite a dangerous
Oh
city.
yeah, a lot of big cities are like that. But a
Yeah,
lot of them can be quite dangerous. Like, I mean, from Bradford originally, and like even
yeah,
Bradford at times was not a fun place to be. And that comes down to just a lot of factors, really. To be honest with you, in the way that these cities are just
yeah,
poorly managed. Most people can't afford to live, as you've experienced yourself. That
yeah,
leads to people more willing to commit, crimes or dangerous acts just to survive. Like that is ultimately the truth of most crimes are people who are desperate and need some stuff, and then can result to
yeah,
using violence as, like, for instance, as a means to get what they
mm,
need, and
yeah.
then there's no infrastructure in place to sort that out. I mean, the police in London as well was terrible.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, most of them have to take police officers from other parts of the country just to deal with, like, say, a protest that they feel is going to be violent, which most of the cases isn't. But
Mm.
yeah, it's no wonder that somebody being there would not feel safe.
Oh yeah, definitely. And it was like so I'd worked at one of the stations in London, Liverpool Street Station actually, which
Mm.
funnily enough was used as a filming location for Secret Invasion, the Marvel Disney Plus series.
Oh yeah, never watched
Yeah,
it.
never watched it, no, but we'll not go into that though. You can watch my review and discussion on Secret Invasion if you want to hear my thoughts about that.
Sure can.
Yeah, but oh yeah, but very disappointing series. Very disappointing series. Yeah, Gaia should not have all the powers of the Avengers. Let's just say that. But yeah, I was working there, and there were times on Sundays would have to work really late and have to get home really late, and which would mean that a lot of times, like I would get a bus back home because obviously the tube on Sundays for whatever reason closes early, because it's
Mm.
about 12. In fact, it does that on Mondays to Thursdays as well. Then on Fridays and Saturdays they do night tube, which is a bit like, well, why couldn't you do that like every day or something? I'm not too sure the logistics of that, but um, to be fair, the tube is terrible anyways. I did not like the tube. And yeah.
Oh yeah, no. The tube has not been, like, updated for fucking God knows how long.
No, the
And
tube is
it's like just genuinely probably, one of the unfortunately, while a really useful thing to have, like a
yeah.
public transportation system that can get you across the city, it is in desperate need of updating.
Oh yeah. I mean, you got the tram system in Manchester, and honestly, I feel like that's probably a bit more reliable.
I've used the tram system in Manchester, it's really good.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I've not used it, but even just by looking at it, it's like that's probably way more reliable than the tube. Like the tube. Yeah, so I'd have to get some buses home, and then I would go to the first bus I would get would be it'd be a very long bus home. I wouldn't get home until like 3 o'clock in the morning, and one of the stops would have been Archway, and honestly, like the amount of unsafety I felt in Archway was just
Yeah.
horrible. Like there was literally one time when there was like a police car just driving around the block constantly, and I was just like, "What the fuck is happening?" I would have people coming up to me in the middle of in the like dead of night, asking me like for change. And I was just there like, "I mean, I'm really sorry, I don't have anything," and like just pretty panicking and everything like that.
Mm.
And then sometimes and then And then like there were just times when like I'd think to myself, is this the night? Literally, is this the night I'm going to get stabbed? Is like, is this some, do you know what I mean? Is this the night I'm going to get mugged? Is this when, like, when you visit London, you don't really feel that. When you live there, that it becomes way more real than anything, and it's just scary. It's just really, really scary. And I think the scariest event for me, I would say, in London would have been when I had to get up early. I had to do an early morning shift once. I think it was on a Friday or a Saturday. I can't remember. And I went to the tube station, and went to East Finchley tube station to get my tube and everything. And there was like a 5:30, I think it was like a 5:30 a.m. tube. So I got there and I was just waiting on the tube, and there was this other guy. He was sitting in the waiting room, and to put in a nice, well, I'm not gonna like hold anything back. He was a smackhead. He was literally was a smackhead. You could tell he was a smackhead. He had like the hair, no, barely any teeth, terrible skin. Like he was just a smackhead. And he saw me on the platform. He came out and then he went, "You all right, mate?" And I was kind of ignoring him. I was like, "No, I'm not going to ignore. I'm just going to ignore him. He'll go away." And he was like, "You're probably wondering what's happening right now. Don't worry, you'll find out soon." And then he starts slowly walking towards me, like literally he starts slowly walking up to me.
That's
It's like,
terrifying.
and it was just literally, in horror films when somebody is standing in fear and you just go, "What are you doing? Run away! Get out! Get out!"
Yeah,
In that moment,
that fight or flight reaction. Yeah.
yeah, in that moment, I've understood why they didn't run, because in that moment, I was just terrified. I was like,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
it's just this complete like stranger who's like off his fucking head is like slowly walking towards me. I don't. He's clearly on something. He clearly has no clue where the fuck he is. And for all I know, I could have been mugged or stabbed or
Yeah.
anything. And then
Absolutely.
eventually,
You could never know what would have happened
oh
if
god,
you'd
no.
stay there.
And then so what I did eventually was I had to race down the stairs of the tube station and then kind of just wait in the main lobby for the train to arrive, because I think he thought I'd left the actual station. And when I ran down the stairs, he was like, "Oh, don't go, bye, mate, love you." And I was like,
Ooh,
"Fuck's
straight.
wrong with you?" Like,
Just off his head, mate.
yeah,
It's the
and
only thing you can think of, really.
yeah, I did eventually get on the tube because I did have to go to work. So what I did was I waited
Yeah.
downstairs because I didn't think he clearly wasn't going to follow me. And then I raced back upstairs and jumped on. And he did get on the tube, but he stayed. He got on a very end carriage and he stayed in there throughout the entire journey. He didn't like, but there was a part of my mind where I was like, is he going to like walk through the rest of the carriages? Because sometimes people can do that. People can, you can. It's a very risky thing. I don't know why the tube allows you to like walk between carriages while it's moving, if how dangerous it is, but you can do that.
Mm.
And it's just, yeah, and yeah, it was scary, and it was probably the scariest thing ever in London. And don't get me wrong, like I've had, and there were other scary things as well. Like I had people who would like walk up to me, and like there was another smackhead but she would hang around East Finchley train station, begging people for change so she could clearly buy some smack. And she would she walked up to me once um when I was just putting money on my Oyster card, and she was like, "I'm really struggling here, mate," and she got like scarily close to me, and I was
Mm.
just like, I gave her some change I had in my pocket just to like try and make her leave, and then she tried coming up to me again a few weeks later, and I kind of just ignored her, and she was like, "All right then, ignore me, rude," and I was like, "Mate, I don't fucking know you, like leave me alone." And
Yeah.
it's like and stuff like that. I remember I was leaving work once and I accidentally bumped into this other guy. He looked quite young, to be fair. And the reason why I bumped into him was because I had my wallet in my hand. I was getting my Oyster card out to like tap it, um, and and um, and he saw my wallet, and he saw my, because I've got a Ridge wallet basically. I'm not
Yeah.
sponsored by this, ain't ad. This is not an ad. I bought a Ridge wallet because I thought they looked cool, and I saw them advertised. And to be fair, they are actually really cool. I do recommend you buy one. I'm not sponsored by them or anything. This is
There
an
you go.
ad.
Free
Yeah,
advertisement.
free advertisement, they're rich. Free advertisement, they're rich. I've had it since 20. To be fair, I've had it since 2021. It's lasted me quite well.
Oh, there you go.
There are markings on it because I've dropped it a few times, but like it keeps the card safe. So
Yeah. Does what
yeah,
you need it to do, so that's fine.
yeah. So anyway, so I was getting my Oyster card out. I actually bumped into this guy. He saw the wallet in my hand. He was like, "Oh, bro, could you buy me some food?" And I was like, "No, I need to go get my train." And he kept trying. He was trying to block me as well. Like he was trying to block me from leaving.
Yeah,
And I was just
that's
like,
the worst.
so I had to kind of shove past him, unfortunately. I remember another time I was walking to another. I was walking to Moorgate tube station because I didn't realize that you could get the tube from Moorgate to Liverpool Street Station. I thought like there were two separate ones, but because I was still trying to figure out the logistics of traveling in the big city.
Oh yeah.
And I was speed walking because I walk really fast because I wanted to make sure I get my tube. And then this guy came up to, I was walking back to this guy and he just started like going, I think he was drunk or something. And he just started going, nah, 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 nah. And it was like he was trying to match it with the faster I walked, the faster he was trying to sing or something. I was like, what the fuck are you doing? Like,
There's some strange people in London.
yeah. And then also you get a lot of other strange people. You'll have people come up to you and be like, "Excuse me, mate, can I ask you a question?" And it's like, "No, thanks." I had a guy come up to me and try it once because I was waiting. I was going on a date with somebody and I was waiting for them to arrive. And then while I was waiting for them, and this was on Tottenham Court Road, and this guy came up to me and he was like, "Oh, excuse me, I'm really sorry, but could you could you give me your phone because I need to call my mom because mine's run out of like battery or something like that." And it's just one of those things where it's like, I'm really sorry, but I'm waiting for somebody, and I'm really sorry, but he just like walked off and started shouting and swearing, and I was like, mate, I don't know who you are, and like, why would I? Do you know what I mean? Like, why would you give someone your? Do you know what I mean?
Mm,
Like,
I
it
know
was
what you
just,
mean,
yeah,
but
um,
yeah, I mean it's always so strange when that happens, especially in a place like London. It's just they're so like they so want people to just like give them what they want that they're literally willing to go like that far. And I can imagine in London in particular, a city which is like well known for being like, not necessarily rude, but very like the people around it are very much like just we're going to where we're going and we're not stopping and speaking to anyone. And
yeah,
yeah, I can imagine that they go through quite ridiculous lengths just to get someone to potentially give them what they want.
mm.
And it does suck that you had to go through those experiences though.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, I mean, people like that too. There are some people like that in York, but
Yeah,
um,
I mean, you will find those everywhere, but I
yeah,
imagine in
well,
London
yeah,
in particular, it's even just more frequent because there's more
it's more
people.
frequent in London. Yeah,
There's
it,
more people, and I think probably a lot of people in London are very, very like poor now, especially with how
cost of living crisis and
yeah,
that.
how much that spiraled out of control. So I'm not surprised by it at all, really, to be honest with you. But
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, even when I've been to London, I've tried to not really, more than usual, not really eh, try to avoid eye contact or even speaking to anyone if I can avoid it because it's just most
yeah,
of the time it's not a good experience. But I mean, in a place like York, we're very lucky in that the majority of the conversations we have with strangers here are positive.
yeah.
I don't think
Like,
there's many where I felt like particularly threatened or anything like that.
mm,
Which is one of the benefits of living in York. It's a very nice place.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, and again, like the people in London, like some of them. I mean, we'll get to other people, but there are some people in London who are just really just not very nice people.
Mm,
Really, we'll get to those.
yeah.
No, no. But yeah, so yeah, it's not very. It is quite a dangerous place. I will say that, and um, there are times when, like, even on a night out and stuff like that, when when you're with a mate of yours, you still don't feel too safe, even if you're with your mate. Like, I was walking behind my mate who's also my housemate, and we were on a night out for St. Paddy's Day, and I was walking behind these two guys, and they like grabbed my arm because they wanted something from me or something like that, and I was like, "No, mate, I don't know what this is about. Leave me alone." I don't know what that was about, but like it was just having somebody just randomly like start.
No, I mean,
Excuse me.
even if that's like a joke, I don't think that's acceptable. Really, I really
No,
can't
no,
stand it when people I don't know try to touch me, even if it's like a gentle. Like I've had people like put their hands on my shoulders, if let's say, "Oh yeah, like that," and I'm like, "Seriously, mate, I don't know who you are. Please take your hand off me." I just don't like it.
yeah,
I just don't see the reason why people need to do that.
yeah,
With
exactly.
with a stranger anyway. Like if it's a mate or something, that's different, but not a stranger.
Yeah, and yeah, so like, so it is just a very it is just dangerous, and
Hmm.
it's a very scary city. I think the people think London is all glitz and glamour, but then
Yeah,
Uh,
I think
yeah,
it depends really, doesn't it? I think
mm,
some people do view it that way. They view London as this very
yeah,
idealistic place where it's like, oh, there's all these amazing things here, oh,
mm,
there's so much to do and all this and this. But like all big cities, they're really not perfect. I mean,
no, no,
I've never really lived in like a really massive city to that scale. But like, I
mm,
know from growing up in a city, that it is not fun sometimes to live in that kind of environment
yeah.
because, yeah, you've got more stuff to do, but just sometimes the standard of living in a lot of those places is not very good.
Oh yeah, definitely. And don't get me wrong, like people, the cost of living crisis has made it even much more
Yeah,
worse. Like I
that's
remember
definitely escalated it further.
yeah, we had a we had a guy like actually steal from our charity bucket in the shop I was working at.
Yeah,
Um, and it was just like, mate, because obviously he was clearly very desperate
yeah,
and everything, but it was just one of those things where it's like, mate, that's not acceptable.
yeah.
Like you can't just steal from charity as well.
And
It's just
I know
that's not
you
code.
don't do something like that unless you genuinely have like you're just that desperate, or maybe you're just evil. Either one of the two, usually. It's usually one of the
Yeah,
two. I'm going to lean more likely desperate because it's
yeah,
easy. It's on the counter. You can just grab it quickly and run, can't you? Like it does make
yeah, exactly.
sense. Oh yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. It's just
just
crazy,
is what it
and
is.
it is what it is. Yeah. So yeah, so it's not a very great place city. Well, it's not a safe city. Let's just say that it's not a
Unless
safe
you can
city,
afford
and
like a private security detail to follow
yeah,
you
unless
around all
you
the time, then you're
yeah,
fine. Don't
yeah,
worry about it.
you're fine, yeah, unless you're like rich or
Yeah.
something like that. Which will don't worry, we'll get to posh people. Don't worry,
We'll get
we'll get
we'll
to
get to the upper classes finally.
yeah. I'm gonna put that as number 10 actually, and then make number 11 number 10 because I need to talk about I need to rant about posh people
That's
because
okay.
there was a video on Instagram talking about
Oh,
posh
excuse
people
me.
and it made my blood boil. Let's just say that it made my blood boil. Um, yeah. So let's get on to topic number 4: racism and Islamophobia. Now,
Oh, I love these topics.
obviously before we get into it, these are very, 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 very heavy topics. Actually, no, wait. But, we'll talk about racism, Islamophobia, and sexism as well because
Let's add that on there because, yeah, we got that.
those are yeah. So these are very heavy topics that we'll be talking about. Obviously, there will be we are going to have links in the description for like helplines and people that are probably more suited to like talk about this stuff than we are because
Uh, I can talk
I mean
about it from a certain perspective, mainly more the
oh yeah
racism and
yeah
Islamophobia angle, as that is something that I have experienced in my life.
mm,
But more so on the sexism angle, that's something I will say we have
yeah
opinions on, which are obviously that negative against sexism. But if
mm,
you want to learn more of that information, there's plenty of other like studies. There's plenty of authors who've written books about those topics that you can find just about anywhere. Um,
yeah
yeah, and then same thing with like police, which is something I'll get into, might get into a little bit with this. As I can recommend a really good book for that if anyone's interested. But for the time being,
yeah yeah.
let's get on to the heavy stuff. Oh, crack it open, Connor.
So I'm just gonna So I mean, this is so obviously because I've spent time in Grimsby and I've spent time obviously because
Yeah,
Grimsby is considered a very racist city, very racist town, and to be fair, it kind of is.
there's a lot of
Uh,
places in the UK that are like that. I think.
yeah, and I know that for a fact that this is a very big problem with the UK as
Oh
a
yeah,
whole,
yeah,
not just
and there are a lot of people who don't see it that way.
yeah,
Mainly white people. White British
yeah,
people don't see it that
yeah.
way.
It's
It
definitely
doesn't
white
matter.
people.
Like, there's something that we should point out is there is a difference between individual racism or sexism or however you wish to refer to it as, and
Yeah,
institutional or societal
yeah,
racism and sexism. There is a big difference.
mhm,
I know that there are a lot of individuals who are not racist and sexist, but they do still prescribe to the social problems that come with the way that women and minorities are treated in, like, say, the work
yeah,
environment, or like, just in everyday life. That is still a problem in the UK, which you can't
mm,
ignore no matter how hard you try.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, I definitely agree
And I
with
can
that, and
imagine in
it's
a place like London, it's pretty bad for it.
yeah, I would say, and this is what I was going to get into earlier. I know that this is a problem in the UK, but I feel like I've witnessed most of it in the 1 year I spent in London than any other place. I don't know why. I guess maybe it's because
I think it's just because you just London has got two things. One, it's a very segregated city as well, where not just in terms
yeah,
of classes, but also in terms of races. There are, like, parts
yeah,
of the city which are predominantly one race, or
Yeah,
or class of people even, and usually that they go hand in hand with each other. Like usually minorities, usually poorer class as a standard. And I think the other
yeah.
problem as well is just that London's so big that there's so many different people that you're just going to run into more of the types of people that unfortunately you don't want to run into.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. It is. Yeah, I remember I was waiting for a bus once, and I was having a conversation with an NHS nurse who was happened to be a woman of color, and she was telling me about how there's a certain look that that people of color get from white
Oh yeah.
people. Yeah, and I didn't even know about it. I mean, because the way the conversation happened was that so my bus got delayed, and I was really annoyed, and I was really angry, and I accidentally pulled that face while she was walking past me, and then
Oh,
she
I
kind of
see.
and then she kind of stopped me and said, "Hey, look, that face, like that face you just pulled, like," and she told me about the history and everything, and I was just shocked by it, and I was like, "Oh my god, I'm so sorry, I didn't." Because obviously, like, and
It
again,
wasn't your intention, and that's fine.
no, of course not. But just because it wasn't the intention doesn't
Oh,
mean
no,
that
no, no,
it's
no. Like,
bad or anything like that.
I think for a now that you know that knowledge, that's better than you not
Yeah,
knowing about it.
and
That's
it's
the most
maybe more.
important thing.
Yeah, and it's maybe more like, okay, aware of, like, I shouldn't. I mean, you shouldn't be pulling faces at people anyways.
Oh,
I
absolutely not.
generally speaking, but like the fact that something as small as a look can like trigger something like that in a person for a person of color.
Oh, yeah.
That's just how
How do you
bad racism really has gotten in the UK and particularly in London. So I can imagine, not to mention like the fact this person was an NHS nurse. I can't imagine like, so obviously NHS nurses, they get treated like shit like all the
Mhm.
time, like 24/7. I can't imagine, but I can't imagine like an NHS nurse of how badly an NHS nurse of color like they must
Yeah.
like must get it like
Oh, yeah,
even
yeah, absolutely.
it must increase for like an NHS nurse of color because like you probably have like patients just being just the utmost saying the utmost worst things to you or saying like the worst racial slurs and saying stuff like that, and it's just yeah, it's just like really it was just really upsetting to like hear. And when I got on the bus home, the first thing I thought to myself was how many white guys has she had to have that conversation with, because I can't imagine that was the
Well,
first time she's had.
I think it's good that you were probably one of the few people she's spoken to that's taken it well as well. I
Yeah.
think that's another big factor is because 'cause there'll be a lot of people saying, "Oh, it's just an expression, don't be so dramatic," or like, "Don't be like this," but a lot of
Oh
people
no.
forget about the historical contexts
Yeah,
that come with
exactly.
this stuff. Like the classic example was in I think it was in Bristol. Actually, funny enough, that there was I've forgotten his name now, but there was a statue on that pier
Yeah, they told it definitely.
of a guy who was like literally a slave
Yeah,
trader. I've
yeah,
forgotten his name. You can probably find it pretty easily online.
yeah.
So look it up.
Isn't it like Edward something? I can't
So,
remember his
something
name.
like
I
that.
think.
But eventually during the protests that did happen in the UK in regards to Black Lives Matter, that statue was pulled down,
Mm,
and a lot of people
yeah.
took that as like, "Oh, that's disgusting. Why would they do that?" And it's like because imagine if you're a black person and you have to walk
Mm,
by that statue every day to go to work and be like, "Why is there a statue of a man
exactly.
who
Yeah.
literally traded my people like property and
Yeah.
tortured them and just treated them like not human?"
Mm,
I can imagine that that's been really would really piss you off. And
yeah.
also,
Exactly.
multiple people petitioned to have that statue removed multiple times with the council, and every time it got
Exactly.
rejected.
Yeah.
So yeah,
That's that's the thing as well. During that time, they were like, "Oh, they should just put it in a museum," and it's like, yeah, they people petitioned to get it put in a
yeah, yeah,
museum,
and
and they
that's
got
fine. Like I'm okay with stuff like that being in museums because that's a place of learning.
yeah,
I don't want
yeah,
that to be
exactly.
displayed out in public because there's no
Mm,
context for most
yeah,
people unless you know about it already. Like
exactly.
you
Yeah.
can't learn anything from it and learn why it's disgusting to have to
Mm,
why that man was a piece of shit for what he did. So yeah.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think as well, like that racism is just not like racism is just not taught well in schools as well. Like the closest we got in history class about
Well,
racism was obviously we got about Rosa Parks and Martin
oh
Luther
yeah,
King,
yeah,
which
yeah.
obviously
And once again, it's a problem with this country that
yeah,
it always frames racism solely from the American perspective. It's always like, oh, look at
mm,
the civil rights movement in there, look at the and even then when it comes to like, the slave trading, they only show the American perspective of like, oh
yeah,
yeah, here's what happened when all those poor African people were put on plantations in the US and like stuff like that. And it's like, well,
Yeah,
we did that as well. Like we were
yeah,
part of the slave trade. Like we were literally the people giving the Americans their slaves. So there's no point
mm,
in trying to sugarcoat it. It's like we all were, all of Europe and America was responsible for the horrific nature of the slave trade during that era. You know,
yeah,
it's like, and then also as well, like, racism is still a major issue in this country, and there's been racial crimes throughout the entirety of the 20th century. And I
yeah,
just don't
exactly. Yeah,
understand why it's about blanketing that and being like, oh well, we're not going to talk about that. It's like we're much better than them Americans, and it's like, oh, shut up. The Americans are related to us. They're all descendants of
mm,
our of our
yeah,
descendants and shit like that. It's like there's no point
mm,
in trying to sugarcoat it, in my
yeah,
opinion. But yeah,
yeah. Yeah, and it's just and the other forms of racism I saw. Like I remember, even before I moved to London, actually, this was in 2021. I met up with a friend of mine who is Jamaican and a person of color and stuff like that. And he had dreadlocks because obviously of his Jamaican ethnic, like
oh
his
yeah,
Jamaican
man.
origins. Like he had dreadlocks in his hair, which is fine. And we were at the Christmas markets, and then this white guy started shouting out, "Oh, dreads! You right, dreads?" And I didn't know who he was talking to, and then I realized he was talking to my friend, and he was like tapping on the shoulder, like, "You right, dreads?" Which is basically a form of microaggression.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
and I was just in the moment I was like, "Why is he calling you dreads?" And he explained it to me. And all I wanted to do was just run after the guy and just punch him
Because
because
yeah, he wanted to bring that to attention that it's like, oh, you're different. And
yeah,
where
exactly,
it's like it doesn't really matter that the guy's got dreads. It's no, what does it fucking matter? Like, who cares?
exactly, yeah.
Fucking idiot,
And it's
man.
just yeah, like that. I saw that. I remember this is probably the biggest one. This is probably this is probably the form of Islamophobia and stuff like that. Where I was working at one of the units at the station, and this guy came up to me and he ordered a coffee. And the thing about me is that the thing is that people just to alliterate is that so I am British, but I'm also Australian. So I'm half like
Ooh.
Australian on my dad's side, British on my mum's side. So I have two passports, I have a dual citizenship, and all that good stuff. And this guy came up to me, I gave him his coffee and stuff, and I thought he would just walk away like most people would, and he didn't. He kind of came up to me and went, because the thing is with the police station was that a lot of my workers were Islam like people who are Asian, Muslim, all that stuff.
Practicing Muslims, of course.
Yeah, practicing Muslims as well. Yeah, I'm still trying to learn the correct terms, but
No, no, it's
um,
all good. It's all good. I think in a lot of people in this country have become very confused about the dissertion between the two, just because of the way
yeah.
that it's been referred to by the press in particular.
Mm. And this guy came up and said, he was like, "Oh, you're British, aren't you?" It was just the way he said it. I was just like, "Okay, I'm not going to tell him I'm Australian because there was just something about the way, or half Australian, because there was something about the way he said that. I was like, I'm not." So I said, yeah, mate, yeah, I'm British." And he was like, "Oh, but the people you work with, they're Indian, aren't they?" And I was like, I didn't say anything back to him by that point. I was just there, like shocked, like, what? Why would you? Do you know what I mean? Like, why would you say that? Like what was? I was just really confused. And then he was like, "Oh, but you work for him, don't you?" And I didn't say anything back to this guy. I just kind of stood there looking at him, just shocked and confused that he was saying this stuff to me. And then he just looked at me and went, "That's disgusting. They should be working for you because it's your country." And I was just there like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" Like, do you know what I mean? Like, it was just one of those things where it's just like, I don't know what the fuck to even say. Like, I'm glad I didn't tell him I was half Aussie because I feel like if I had done that, he probably would have told me to fuck off or something like
Yeah,
that.
tell him to go
Oh,
fucking read Mein Kampf, the goddamn Nazi.
yeah, exactly. I was like, literally, I was just there, like, I've just served a full on Nazi. Like, that's literally
If
the
anybody
dis-
says anything like that, it's like usually a case of they have like leanings towards like white supremacy usually.
Oh yeah,
Not a fun thing to to experience, which is something I think any minority has experienced at one point.
oh yeah. This guy generally was just your typical EDL
Yeah, fucking
guy,
gammon. That's what we call them.
like massive,
How
bald,
was he?
bald,
He should have gotten him angry
bald
because then he would have turned pink. It would have been really funny.
maybe. But it was just shocking because I never, on my time in like doing retail work, I've never had served anyone who's ever been that like mask off. I'm racist. I'm Islamophobic.
Oh yeah, yeah.
This. They're like, what the fuck is going on? Like, I remember, like, it was just crazy. It was just like, it was just one of those things. I was just shocked, and I was just like, what the fuck do I do? Like, do I call security and get him
Uh,
removed? Do I like?
I
I
mean,
didn't really
this is
know.
kind of the difficulties with this is that you can't really do anything because
Mm,
he's said it, yeah, but he's not been particularly aggressive or verbally abusive to even you or the other workers, really.
yeah,
He said some really horrible shit, and you can be like, "Look, mate, I don't agree with that. Can you leave now, please?" And then if he got aggressive after
yeah,
that, you could have him removed. But
mm,
yeah, you can't really do anything about it, unfortunately, which is frustrating. But
yeah,
he's unfortunately allowed to say whatever he wants. So
mm,
it's kind of the way it works.
yeah. And what else? There was a few more examples as well. Yeah, yeah, I remember now. Yeah, there was, and then we even had a racist postman. Like our postman was racist.
Oh,
He
mate, they
literally
love it.
like he came to the door and gave my housemate the mail, and then he just said to my housemate, "Oh, you guys got too many Asians in your building apartment complex." And I was like, we were just there like, what the point? What was your point in saying that?
I
Like,
think what a lot of these people want to do
yeah,
is because they feel like as if they shouldn't be mixing, you know, with other races, right? So they say
mm,
stuff like that in hopes that you agree with them. And then
oh,
by doing that, they've now found a new group of people to sort of like, you know, feel comfortable around. I'm saying this in quotation marks, comfortable around, when really it's
yeah,
just, you know, everybody's completely fine. You can just talk to them like normal people. It's fucking ludicrous.
yeah,
But I've met people like that before who say shit like that, and I'm just like, well, what does it matter? Like,
mm,
why is it any of your concern if there's Asian people here? Like, what are you afraid they're gonna do? Yeah, and I think it doesn't help as well that London in particular has a history of using minorities as a means to promote, like, you know, oh, the reason why there's problems in this city is because of X people.
yeah,
So that's still got a long history that a lot of people still remember from being back in the 70s. I mean, it was all over TV, it was all over the news, newspapers, would have been everywhere.
yeah,
Even before the 70s, it's been used for a very long time, and it's something that is still
mm,
common even in the north of England. Something that I've heard multiple times. Yeah, it's
yeah,
just horrific that
yeah,
it just shows that this is what I mean about the societal thing. And then the problem
mm,
is that when people when certain, like, you know, leaders get elected into power who are very
yeah,
open about how they feel about like minorities, it then emboldens those people to talk more. And then they
mm,
feel like it's like, well, everybody's um speaking like this now, I can speak about that, and hey, I'm just saying what everybody's thinking. And it's like, well, no, everybody's not thinking that, you fucking idiot.
no,
Yeah.
no, definitely not.
Yeah, it's annoying. It's really annoying because you know that ultimately it's a cowardly thing to do.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
that is the truth about most racists. They're fucking cowards. Um, they won't speak up unless the majority agree with them, and that is ultimately the truth of it. If the majority didn't agree with them, they wouldn't bother. Yeah,
Yeah, I know.
that's
Yeah,
the way it goes.
definitely.
You can't do anything. You can't do anything about it. But yeah, so I am very sorry you had to deal with those things, Connor, in London.
I mean, well, yeah, but I feel. I mean, I do. I feel more sorry for for people of other ethnicities and people of color and stuff like that who have to experience that stuff every
Mm.
day. You know what I
Oh
mean?
yeah,
Who have to
yeah.
like,
It must suck.
I'll
It does suck for the people who
yeah,
do very much look different as well, in particular,
mhm,
because that's something that
yeah,
I've obviously experienced that more in a different way. What like more secondhand, where it's
yeah,
like because I don't really look like I'm half Turkish, but I don't really look any different from like anyone else
yeah,
on the street, so I don't really get stopped in the street for looking different or weird looks or anything like that. But that all changes as soon as I mention that I'm Turkish, obviously. But I've heard people, and this is what I mean, where I've been in groups where it's only white people, and they say the most horrendous shit about like minorities, and it's like
yeah.
I'm sitting right here, man. Like it's
Mm,
ridiculous. Does one say that obviously that's not the case for every white person, but there are some people who just do that, and I don't like it.
mm. I did have someone I did have a customer actually who was also like being really transphobic towards trans people and stuff
Yeah,
because
I've experienced that
it
as
was
well. But that's still, I mean, it's horrible to hear that, but that is still a popular belief at the time. At this time, the it
mm,
trans it, the hysteria around trans people. It was the same thing, you know, in previous decades where it comes to other minorities. It just it is just the
Yeah,
time we
exactly.
live
Yeah.
in, unfortunately. It will fade away with time, but, the damage that has been done there, you can only do so much to minimize it at this stage, which
Mm.
sucks.
Yeah, exactly. And I think because obviously, yeah, this is a problem throughout the whole of
Mm.
the UK, not just London. But I think the reason why it hit most in London was because one, I witnessed it more in London than any other city, but also just because London for years London has always kind of picked like manifested itself as like, oh no, we accept other people, we accept multiple different cultures. Like we've got people from this part of the world, this part of the world living here. We're
Mm.
diverse, we're cultural, we're massively left wing, and then you get there, and then you just and there's
Yeah,
just
and you see,
full of
yeah, that's the reality
yeah
for that is all.
reality,
Yeah,
yeah,
that sentiment is always spread by people who are very fortunate to be in a position where they, they can be sort of experience these cultures in a way that's like,
yeah,
very much like, oh, they can go to all these different places, like even travel the
mm,
world, you know what I mean? But the rest of these
yeah,
people, like the regular working class people, they can't do that because they're
yeah,
too busy living in fucking London and being poor. So then they get
yeah,
these, and then they have these experiences with like locally where maybe at school they had a falling out with a kid who just happened to be of another race, and then it's like, well, that's it, they're all bad. It's really
mm,
unfortunate that is just it can be as
yeah,
simple as that, really. Oh, and just the stigma that has been existed for decades that comes from like the previous generations
yeah.
is still unfortunately something that we're battling against, which really sucks.
Yeah, I was watching. There was a clip on the Politics Joe Instagram page today. Actually, where they were in. I can't remember whereabouts they were in. I think it was. I think it may have been a part of London, maybe another part of the UK. But they were interviewing this man of color, and he was just saying like, "Oh, I have to work 10 times harder because people look at me, they see the way I
Oh yeah,
dress,
yeah,
and
yeah.
they." He was dressing like like shirt, bandana, and stuff like that, and he was like, they'll think that I'm like like I think like oh I'm gangster
Oh
and
yeah,
I eat
yeah.
fast.
Even though it's just an aesthetic, it doesn't really.
Yeah.
You can't discern anyone's
Mm.
like that through clothing. It's just impossible. Like there are people
Yeah.
who dress well. I mean, there's a difference between blue collar and white collar crime. There are people who wear
Yeah.
suits who commit crimes. It's like it's
Mm.
not a factor at all. It's so fucking depressing that
Yeah.
that's still a thing that we have to deal with.
Yeah, exactly. And then yeah, but I think the thing why it hits more with London was just because again, it advertised itself as this big, diverse
Oh yeah,
cultural city, and
it's
then
virtue signaling at the end of
yeah,
the day. It's
mm,
it's a product of
yeah,
people who benefit from being able to experience the world on a much bigger scale than most other people, but are doing nothing to solve the problems on it in grassroots really,
yeah,
which
yeah.
is really depressing. In general
Oh
speaking,
yeah,
doesn't help as well that the Conservative government in particular has not been particularly fond
yeah,
of immigrants and like a lot of the
yeah.
sent well, that also didn't help as well was like Nigel Farage and like his whole movement of UKIP as well
Oh
really put a
yeah,
massive stain on like the concept
yeah.
of immigration, and it's like, well, immigration is a really important thing for any
Mm.
country really, to be honest with you. You
Oh
want
yeah,
to
definitely.
have immigrants in your country because they make the quality of life better.
Yeah, yeah.
Um
And then Brexit happens, and then they were like,
yeah, and
oh,
then Brexit, yeah, yeah.
yeah, and then people are starting to figure out that out. Oh, actually, Brexit, like Brexit was bad, and they were wrong about immigration and stuff like that, which they were.
Well,
Like,
that will be a big thing to come into the next election that will definitely happen this year.
mm.
This is now just turning into a politics podcast. I will.
Isolation politics.
Yeah,
That's what we're
that's it,
doing.
man.
That's the
But I love
stuff.
this stuff, so it's fine. I love talking about this stuff because I think it's
Yeah.
really important. I was going to say we'll briefly touch on the sexism stuff as well because
Oh
that's
yeah,
still a
definitely.
big problem in the UK as well. Misogyny in general is still a massive problem.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I mean, I wouldn't say I saw. There was only I remember like I was on a night out with with my housemate again, and we were in Soho. We were in this really nice posh club bar. I mean, it cost us 20 quid to get in, which is absolutely
That's
ridiculous,
ridiculous.
but whatever. And then it cost us another 20 quid just to hang out courtside, which is absolutely ridiculous as well. Um, and then I was dressed in a suit because it was my last big night out in London. I wanted to feel
You wanted to
like
feel like a fancy dandy.
nice, feel nicely dressed, just go out and suit up in London. Why not? May as well. So I had a tie on and stuff like that. And then this guy, we were at the bar ordering drinks, and there was this guy, and he just looked at me and went, he just pointed to me. He asked, like, he just pointed to me and went, take the tie off. And I was like, what? He was like, take it off now. Looks like you've been to a funeral, take it off. It was like really demanding. And I was just like, what the fuck? Like, and normally those types of people I would just ignore. But this guy was just being so demanding, wouldn't leave us alone. So I thought, I'll take it off and he'll probably just leave us alone. And he didn't. He just then was like, oh, do you guys like girls? Are you on the pool? How old are you guys?
Oh, that's
You got 24 minutes to go.
fucking
And
Jesus.
it was very, very, it was just very pickup artisty, basically. He was clearly some kind of weird misogynistic pickup artist who one of those guys who was like, "Oh yeah, I'm good with the ladies. They love me. I'm cute and successful. I'm this. I'm like this man." And it's like, and
Yeah,
eventually I was like,
that's why
"Tell me,
you're out on your own in the middle of
yeah,
in London on your own, talking to
yeah,"
2
and then like,
dudes.
yeah, and then I don't know if he was on his own. I think he may have been with a group of guys, but I'm not too
Fucking
sure.
still group of guys.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but like
what a fucking player.
yeah, and then he offered to buy us drinks, and as soon as it got to that, I was like, no, because spiking is very big in London,
Oh, yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
like, it's just something about the way he was moving and acting. I was just like, I think he's going to try and spike us. Like, I don't. There was just something about that just seemed like it. I just seemed like a spiker, because obviously spiking is just the first thing about spiking. Like first of all, is that one, it's morally wrong, and two, I don't get why you'd want that in the first place, because like
Because there are
you can
some
get
fucking sick freaks out there, to put it bluntly.
through.
That's ultimately
Yeah.
what it is at the end of the day. It's not rooted in any kind of logical sense, really. It's a means for a
Mm.
predator to make someone vulnerable,
Yeah.
so that they
Yeah.
can, do whatever it is that they want to do with them. That's simply all it is, really. And it's disgusting that that kind of thing is still very difficult to get someone accused for and face any kind of like justice. Or the fact
Yeah.
that they're even able to get those kinds of drugs like easily is really fucked up. But that's a bigger problem with society as well. Like, and
Yeah.
leads into the sexism thing of like how men have like this shield around them that allows them to commit these horrible acts and almost get away with it. Like it's really horrible.
Yeah. No, it's true, yeah. And then you have and then like I've had friends who have said they've had like people come up to them, and like women with friends who are women who've had people say these really horrible like sexist kind of misogynistic like comments to
Oh
them
yeah.
and saying, "Oh, yeah, you're right, darling." And it's like, why would you it's just it icks me. It's an ick. It's a massive ick.
No, and
And
a lot of women don't like it either. I think pretty much all women,
like,
nearly all women,
no,
don't
no,
like
no.
it either. It's annoying that they have to still have to deal with that like on a regular basis.
Yeah,
But it is an
too, yeah.
unfortunate fact of society. It's something that we as well as men have to try and
Mm,
understand that like yeah, that thing does happen. Um,
yeah,
you should never try to make anyone feel uncomfortable. I definitely try not to
yeah,
do that, and you should understand that a lot of women would probably feel more comfortable with other women, and like if they don't want to speak to you and don't want to hang out with you, just accept that and move on.
yeah, exactly, yeah.
As a general rule of thumb, just be like, that's fine, it's okay, don't worry about it, and just move on.
Yeah, exactly. Like, if you yeah, just leave people
Yeah,
alone.
but some men are so fucking desperate that they'll literally try anything.
Yeah,
It
exactly.
is sad that that's just the case,
Yeah,
and then it's sad that society allows that to happen
mhm,
because of it. Yeah. So yeah,
mm. Yeah, it is just a problem, and it's I can imagine in London, it's a big,
in London,
big
I can
problem.
imagine it's really fucking bad for it. I mean, it's pretty
It's not
bad even in a place like York. I mean,
oh,
there's
yeah.
still a lot of sexist people that
I've seen a lot of
and going
yeah,
going
sexist
out if you're a woman, even in a place like York, is probably very terrifying experience sometimes. Just having to
mm,
deal with men.
yeah, just having to deal with yeah, it's very it's just horrible and wrong,
Yeah.
and yeah, we're not here for it. We're not here
No,
for it.
we try our best
We
to never engage in that kind of activity. And I like to think we
exactly.
do a pretty good job of not doing it. But, you
Yeah,
know, as a man, as a straight man, I can't really fully comment because,
yeah,
there are things that even I like in terms of like a broader perspective, in terms of my own coded biases, can also like forget about. But I try my best to make sure that I understand them and keep an eye and you
yeah.
know what I mean? Like, not saying that
No, I get it,
I
yeah.
like to think that I would never do that, but I have to understand that I'm capable of doing it, which is a big thing
Mm. Yeah,
that a lot of
exactly,
men
yeah.
don't realize as well. I'd never do it. And it's like, well, yeah, of course you'd never do it, but you can do it. Of course you can.
You can capable
Yeah,
of it,
exactly. Yeah.
that
That's what
happens.
women are fucking scared of.
Yeah, exactly. That's why women don't want to date you, mate.
Or maybe
Unfortunately.
not just date you, but maybe approach you with a bit of caution. And maybe don't
Yeah.
why a lot of women don't like it when blokes randomly walk up to them in the middle of a nightclub, in a dark place where it's loud and they can't literally fucking scream for help. And don't
Mm,
follow
yeah,
them to the
exactly.
toilet. I know blokes I've seen blokes do that. Do not fucking do it. It
Oh,
is weird.
Jesus
Yeah,
Christ.
it's really weird. Some blokes will do that, and I'm like, "Why? Just stop."
Wow. What they're gonna plan? What they're gonna do? Walk into the girls' toilets or
No,
something?
they
Like
just
wait
wait
outside?
outside so that they can then
Oh,
talk to them again. And it's
yeah.
like, "Don't do that." Some blokes I've known have done that.
Oh God.
It's just
That's
weird.
just
Yeah, it's
cringe.
weird. Oh, well.
Yucky.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Oh well.
London's a great place to live. You can move down within a year.
You can move down. You can move down at any time. Yeah. Right. Let's get off this point and let's move on
Oh, we've
to.
come out of the dark tunnel.
Uh,
We've come back into the light.
well, we're going back to the
Oh,
dark tunnel
no.
again
It's
because
another one.
we're going to talk
Fucking
about
Jesus.
point number five: bad manager. Now, the company I was working for at the time did a trans. The company I was working for in York at the time,
Mhm.
which me and you, Alex,
Yeah,
actually
that
worked
was how
for.
we met. We worked at the same
Yeah,
place, and
we're not
we
gonna,
got along pretty well, if I do say so
yeah,
myself.
we're not going to say the name of the company, obviously,
No, we shall shroud
because
them in secrecy for this.
But I enjoyed working for them in York. They were a pretty good company to work for in York. They also did managed train stations in London, and I just thought, yeah, why not? Let's do a transfer. That way, I've got a job up there, and I can look for creative internships or traineeships and stuff like that. What I was not intended for was a the manager I had, and I'm just gonna be blunt about them. They were a bully, a massive bully. They would yell at their staff. They would scream at their staff. They would, and if it, the my littlest thing that went wrong, they would immediately just blame their staff. And a lot of their staff members just didn't. A lot of the staff just didn't like them, and they had problems with them. And you try, they had a massive victim mentality. A really big victim mentality. To be honest, if you did if you did even one thing wrong, they would literally like they would literally just act like you did it on purpose or something like that, and it's like, oh, I'm the victim in this, and it's like, no, you're really. It wasn't personal, pal. It was just a mistake, and yeah, they were just a bully. Like basically, they
Mm.
were just a massive bully and just not a great person to work for. And and there were some reasons for it. They were running like free shops at the same time, which obviously would affect you massively. But I feel like you need to, if that's the case, then like drop the other two and just focus
Well,
on one.
yeah, I think that's a broader issue
Yeah,
that comes with a lot of these companies.
yeah,
Uh, um, Putting so much pressure on people to, manage multiple these businesses all at once because they've cut down on their staff by so much, which a lot of places have done,
yeah,
especially since COVID, and then have made no efforts to replace those people. So now you've got the problem of people being ridiculously overworked, and then unfortunately it leads to situations that you dealt with where they're so stressed out all the time that they are literally, you know, incapable of just acting like normal human beings in regular interactions, which really sucks.
yeah, exactly. And yeah, exactly. And it's just
Mm.
like, yeah, it's just one of those
It,
things where
it
it's
it does.
just,
It's something that I think a lot of people have experienced in many work
yeah,
environments. Like I've experienced it as well, where
mm,
I've seen people just go like, "Are you okay?" Like I've not had it much experience to me directly, but I've definitely seen other staff members be affected by people like that, and it does really suck that that happens because you just kind of feel
mm,
like it's so
yeah.
unnecessary and unwarranted, and it comes with just unloading a load of work and pressure onto one person, and then they've got these expectations from these people above them who are telling them what to do, and then yeah, it leads to unfortunately the very terrible experiences that even you dealt with.
Oh yeah, like this person, they would like message GCs and saying like, "Oh, if you can't follow basic instructions, get another job." And it's like, first of all, why would you say that? And during a top like a cost of living crisis,
Mm.
and you know what I mean. And I think the worst thing I think one of the worst things they ever did though was as I said before, and a lot of people that worked at that place were Muslim, Asian, yeah,
Yeah,
so they would pray a lot. And the shop I worked at, they would usually come around back there and pray there because that's their biggest
yeah.
space thing, and I didn't mind it. I was like,
Yeah, it's fine.
yeah,
It's
go on,
part of their religion, and it's it's an
like,
important part
yeah,
of it. So I'm fine with them if they want to pray.
yeah, yeah, and but this person, this manager, they came up to me once and they said, "Oh, I need a favor from you. I need you to stop people from praying."
Well, you can't
I need
do that. That's against the law.
yeah, He's like, I need you to try and like tell him not to pray back at the shop because their excuse were their excuse was basically that they keep people keep coming in without asking permission, and when my boss is in and interrupts our meetings, and it's like, just like tell them yourself,
Yeah.
like, you know what I mean, like,
If it's
and
that
it's one of the things
important,
where,
tell them yourself. But the reason why he
yeah,
didn't want to tell them himself is because he can't do that legally. He's not allowed to do
yeah,
that. They have freedom
yeah,
of their religion to practice it in those times, and it's like, yeah, if they need to do it, they need to do it. It's part of it.
yeah. And and again, it's one of those things where it's like, again, you want me, a white atheist, to
Well, it's not even
tell
it's not
Muslims,
even just that. I mean, why is it your place in general? You're
like,
not a managerial staff. It's not your responsibility, regardless
yeah.
of what ethnicity or religion you are. Like
Mm.
it's not your call. Like that's something that they need to deal with then. If it's so fucking if it's such a big problem to them, that's their choice.
Yeah,
Like, but he didn't do it because he knew he'd get in trouble for it.
yeah, exactly. And it's just one of those things where it's like, and I guess like he was like, oh yeah, if I tell this other staff member to do, they'll take the fall, and it's like, really, like, do you know what I mean? It's just trying to
Well, it's
dodge
such a
like responsibility.
responsibility, which is always the worst thing you can do when
Yeah,
you're in a position of power,
yeah,
as
exactly.
we've learned
That's
from our
it.
governments.
Yeah, and it's like he was just abusing his position of power like so much, and he would like, like one time, me and him gone to an argument because I think he like somebody left a box of like caramel shortcakes out and threw him like he didn't throw him at me like per se, but he threw him like
He threw
towards
them in your
like
direction, yeah.
in my
Which he
direction. It
shouldn't
was
do,
quite
which he
rude,
shouldn't do. No, absolutely not.
and it was just like, oh, put this out, and I was like, I didn't leave those there, and he was like, did I say that? Did I say? And we just got into this massive argument, and it was like, really, bro, you're really arguing about caramel shortcakes? Like, I don't know. They were just a terrible person to work for. And in the end, the thing that finally took me over the edge to quit was that I made a mistake at work. I rang them up early the next morning because I remembered my mistake, told them about it, and they just let out a massive scream. And I was like, nah, I know I'm quitting, pal.
Fucking
So
hell.
I handed them a notice that day, and they were like shocked. They're like, oh no, and yeah, it just never worked for them again.
You're not but
And
fucking Jesus,
for
it's
and
quick to get
if
you over
if
the
you're listening to
phone,
this,
Jesus.
yeah. And if you're listening to this, pal, if by any means necessary, you are a terrible manager. You are a horrible person. You need to treat your staff with a bit more respect. And yeah, and if you can't do that, then don't be a
Damn
manager.
straight.
Basically, yeah. And you can't come after me because I didn't use your name or anything. So just
Well, just
that,
leave it at that then.
do that up, then yeah. So yeah, that's and but to talk about bad managers, I can imagine people in London, even like even people in like manager not managers themselves, but managerial positions can be treated with the utmost disrespect. Like I remember my housemate, he was working for a restaurant, which I won't name of restaurant. I'm not going to say, but he eventually just walked out one random day because he came into work. The founders of the restaurant had a go at him for something that wasn't his fault, and because he wasn't a manager, but he was doing like a manager's work, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like he was working from like 2 p.m. to 11 p.m. To like really dumb times. He was having to train all the staff. He was doing like a manager
Yeah,
job
without
without
getting the pay for it,
being
which is another problem.
getting
That's
paid
always a
for it.
problem with a lot of working
Yeah,
places. You having to take on more responsibility than you can actually do.
yeah, exactly. And and yeah, so like, and then he just eventually decided, you know what, I'm just walking out. I just can't. He just couldn't do it anymore. And he walked out, and he was able to find another job, which was good for him. Which actually I do want to touch on a little bit with this. Like the job market in London in general is just in York. I've never struggled to find a job. Like I've always managed to like find
Mm.
work in York. It's just found it much more easier in this kind of city. But in London, it's a massive struggle. It is a massive struggle. I knew people who one of my other housemates, their girlfriend got me redundant at her job, and then she was struggling for months to find a new one. She didn't find a new one until about November,
Oof.
and got me redundant in, I want to say, July,
Jesus.
and didn't find a new job until November. And she had to rely on her parents for rent and stuff like that. and to like financially support her. And it was just one of those things where, and even I struggled with it. I was trying really hard to like find another job. I only got, I applied with so many jobs. And guess how many interviews I got? Guess how many interviews overall?
3.
About four.
Yeah, close enough. But yeah,
Yeah,
within a year
but
of
yeah, like
living in a place and you only got 4 interviews, that's ridiculous.
yeah, it's
Most places, I mean, even when I have been, like, struggling looking for a job, I've at least had, like, that many interviews in a week living in the North. You know what I mean? For,
yeah,
like, different
exactly.
jobs, obviously, but, like, I've had that many in a week, not a year.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just one of those things where it's just like, I mean, I get the job market's really hard at the moment now because obviously with the cost of living crisis and that sort of stuff. It's weird
Well,
how
it's
like in 20,
it's I mean, yeah, but it's even worse in London just simply because, like,
yeah,
there's no real job market there unless you're a professional of some kind and have
mm,
boatloads of
exactly.
experience. Then you're likely to
Oh
get a
yeah.
job very easily. But if you're
Mm.
not that, then it's like, well, tough luck, pal.
Yeah, and it's all mostly trial shifts and everything. And I hate trial shifts, man. I think trial shifts are just. I don't think trial shifts are great. I think trial shifts are actually
I,
quite. That puts the person under a lot of
I think
pressure.
it really depends, doesn't it? Like, I can understand that from a
Yeah,
perspective of it being like, let's say, for instance, if the job requires you to do something specific, and you've said in the
yeah,
interview, I can do that, because obviously you need to prove that you can do it. So I can understand why a
yeah,
trial shift might be used for that, but or to just see if you actually want to work in that job at all.
yeah,
I can understand it, but I don't think every job needs to have it.
yeah, exactly. And yeah, and the job market in London is just terrible. I mean, my housemate who walked out on his job, he on his last job, he was able to find a new one quite quickly. But he was quite lucky in that regard because I think because he's done managerial work before, he
Yeah,
was
he
able
had the
to.
experience needed and he had the references that allowed him to. But when you're moving to a
Yeah,
place for the first time, for instance, you've really got no referential for working in that city. So, it
yeah,
becomes
exactly.
harder for you to gain, like, some kind of reputation to get a
Mm,
job easier. So I can understand why it was probably even
yeah,
harder if you've just moved there for the
yeah,
first time.
exactly. Yeah, and yeah, and yeah, bad managers and just bad job market all round, really. And I feel sorry for people in London who have to work like hospitality jobs because it has to be hell. I mean, I was lucky; I only got a small little, like, dinky little cafe, coffee shop to work at. But even that was hell at some points,
Yeah.
like particularly during Christmas when
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I had to try to shop in, and then I'll have a massive queue, and then people just keep coming in.
Yeah.
I tried telling people, "Oh, I'm really sorry, guys. I've really got to close now," and they're like, "No, mate." I'm buying something. Like people in London are so
Yeah,
like
I know.
just
That's a their general problem that comes with hospitality, and I can imagine it's even worse
yeah.
in a
They
place like
think
London where there's just so many
yeah,
people, and it's like how could you even? I can't even imagine closing a shop is easy without, like, having someone
yeah,
by the door literally stopping people from coming in.
yeah. I literally it got easier after Christmas. It was just during Christmas
Yeah,
people
yeah.
would
Christmas in particular is
try
a time where
coming
people,
in
because
nonstop.
that's something I've experienced even where I work. Like, I mean, this year wasn't as bad as last year, but, like, at work, sometimes the people there can just be so, like, specific and so obnoxious and very much like,
Mm,
well, I want this to happen, and it's like, well, it ain't happening, bud. And they just won't listen
mm,
to reason, and you go, all right,
yeah.
well,
Oh god.
I don't know what I can do for you
Do,
then, but yeah.
do you remember that York Racer guy that tried getting a packet of
Oh
crisps
yeah,
who
that was
closed?
fun. That was a funny experience.
Like,
And we
that
were,
was
like,
just
literally locked up and, like, yeah, I mean,
yeah,
what more can you do for some? You
isolated.
can't help some people sometimes. That's simply the matter of it.
Yeah.
And I think it just in a place like London, because there's just so many people, it's
Mm,
just you're just going to get more of those people, unfortunately, in the general, you know, the general flow of people that you get. You'll get plenty of good people as well, obviously, but a fair share of
yeah.
the worst kind as well, unfortunately.
Yeah. And but also it's just the entitlement from some people as well, where they think, "Oh no, I deserve this," and so they run off and
Ah, some people are
they
weird.
they
What
stand
can
in
you
line.
do? You don't know their
Yeah,
full story, but you're just like, I just don't
yeah,
understand it, but that's fine. Maybe they weren't raised right, maybe they were, maybe they're, I don't know. You can never really be 100% sure of anything. Yeah,
yeah,
but I know that feeling all too well.
mm, yeah. No, I get that. Yeah, um, and it's just one of those things as well. It's just bad, man. It's just really bad, and like I can't imagine people working like a Weatherspoons in London, for example.
Jesus,
That must
working
be
in any
like
bar in London is probably the worst.
yeah, or a bar as well, or it's like
Yeah,
a
I
night
can't
even a
imagine it.
nightclub. Can't imagine it. Can't imagine it. It's got to be horrendous. Or even something else like a McDonald's or something like that in London. That's got to
Like
be
fucking when I went down last year, like we walked past the McDonald's and there was literally like 5 security guards in one of them. I mean, and we've
yeah.
got some in York as well that like are outside of it, but majority of the time it's not that bad.
Mm,
I mean, one
yeah.
good thing about York City Centre being so small is that all the bouncers like can communicate with each other. So if they need to
Yeah.
move from one place to another because something really bad is happening in one place, they can do that. Whereas in London,
Yeah.
that'd
Exactly.
be impossible. And dealing with
Mm,
people in London, oh my god, it'd just be the worst. I can't
it
imagine
would
it.
be the way. God. And yeah, man, it's the job market in London is just not great.
Yeah,
Let's get on to point number
yeah.
six. This is the
Me and
one
my
that
homies
we
hate jobs. Sorry,
yeah no we hate
hate
working. No,
jobs.
I'm joking. Um, let's get on to point number six, which is a call. I like meeting new people. Do you like meeting new people, Alex?
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, no, yeah. I mean, we all like meeting new people, don't we?
Yeah, of
Like
course I do.
eventually, yeah. Good luck trying to meet new people in London because that is completely impossible to do. You can if you generally think you can meet new people in London, then unless you're like working with them, I guess. Like unless you're like
Hmm.
unless you guys are like working and stuff like that, then yeah, by all means do it. Um, but like but yeah, if you guys are working and stuff like that, that's in a workplace or everything, that's fine. But like in York, for example, right? You can literally go to like a bar and meet new people anywhere and
Yeah,
have a chat
it
with them.
helps that York
These
people in
people,
York are very friendly.
they're very friendly, they're very nice. In London, you try and do that,
No, it ain't happening.
they'll it's not going to happen. They're just going to look at you like, "Oh my god, why are you talking to me? Leave me alone." And you can't say you blame them really, because again, with what we were talking about before, with how dangerous London can be, people there, like even things like basic common courtesy or common kindness, be like like I was talking to somebody about this on New Year's Eve, where they had been to London, they let somebody go before them to put money on their Oyster card, and the people and the woman that they had let just looked at them like really scared and really like, oh, and it's like, no, you can just go do it, mate. It's fine, I don't care. And yeah, there's people in London are just they're terrified, they're paranoid all the time, and I can't say I really blame them. I mean, being in that working environment, being in that cycle, being in a very dangerous city, like you would have severe paranoia, basically.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, a
Yeah,
lot of big cities are like that as well. You don't have people there that really feel that they want to interact with other people because it can be frustrating living in a city like that. And it's
yeah,
yeah, you can understand why people don't want to talk to each other. I mean, I've been to
mm,
London and I don't want to talk to half the people that I've walked past. Like it is genuinely you just like
yeah,
don't want to. Yeah, fucking hell, man.
yeah, exactly. I mean, people in York again. People in York are happy. They're friendly. You chat to them and they like you can get along with them really really well. Like, me and my mates we were in York for my birthday last year, and we met this couple in in a bar, and we were chatting to him all day long and throughout the night, and it was really nice.
Mm,
And then when I moved back to York in November, I met another couple in Evil Eye, and we were just chatting to them, and they were really nice. And it's like everyone, it's weird because when you get to York, everyone is just immediately chill and friendly, and that's great. And then you get to London, and everyone's just miserable and just like like not
yeah.
horrible, but just unhappy. They're not happy with their lives because they're too because obviously they're working like jobs being paid shit wages and they can't afford to do anything, which we'll get into in a little bit later. But people in London are just they're miserable, they're paranoid,
Hmm.
they're scared, and it's hard to meet new people. Particularly like because there's an app in London, there's a dating app in London called Thursday.
Yeah.
And to be fair, like for the Thursday apps, those are probably the only times I've ever seen people be really chatty because you know the idea is to go to those events because the idea of Thursday, if you don't know it, is it's a dating app. You go to the people bars and stuff like that host these events where single people can meet up and chat and and engage and everything. And yeah, and you see people being comfortable and being more relaxed and everything, which is really nice to see. But you get down like a regular night out, like that's not going to happen. Like people there are going to be quite like looking over their shoulder and just being like, "Oh my god, is this going to happen to me?" It's bad. It's really bad. It's bad, and it's just very sad a sad sight to see, really.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. That's just the way it is, though. In big cities like London.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone's just scared and paranoid, and it's hard to meet new people, which leads into point number 8 is feeling lonely and feeling isolated.
Mm.
As well as that, we'll join them up to number 8 and number 9 being feeling lonely and isolated and too expensive, well, because they kind of go hand in hand together. So I said at the start of this episode that my New Year's resolution was to live my life, because 2023 I did not live my life at all. Most of the time, it was when I was living in London, it was either work or staying in the flat because I can't afford to do
Yeah.
anything. And in the end, that ended up making me feel really, just really
Well,
lonely
you
and
can
really
understand
like,
then why people in London are so fucking miserable. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Because like they can't have money to really do anything, and then some fucker comes up to them and
yeah,
tries to talk
exactly,
to them, and then like, oh, can you not talk to me? I need to go home and be in my flat on my own and just yeah, and sit
yeah,
around and not afford anything. God,
yeah,
you know what I
exactly. And
mean?
it's just
Yeah, it
like,
just sounds
yeah,
miserable. Sounds like a miserable existence. It's no wonder.
yeah, and my bank account took a hit, really big hit. I was constantly dipping in and out of my overdraft all the
Mm.
time, because how expensive it was, and you can't do anything. And because of that, you feel really lonely. Like there's times I want to go out, I want to meet new people, I want to have a life, but I just don't have one because I feel like unless you have a girlfriend or something or a partner or something like that, then there's just if you're just a single guy,
Yeah, it's like
then
you can't really do
you
anything, can you?
can't do anything. Like you just can't do anything. That's the
Yeah.
problem.
Then it's like, what's the point in having all that stuff there if you can't even do anything?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, I mean, that's for tourists. Let's be honest. London, like,
Oh
if you're a
yeah,
tourist,
London's a massive
like,
tourist city.
yeah,
Yeah, it's definitely a big
if you're a
part of what it's
tourist,
about.
you like, I'm gonna be honest. If I went to London now, I would be able to afford to do the stuff that I wanted to do when I was living there. But if you're living there, you can't do anything. It's either you go sit in your house, just sit on your ass. You can't do anything. I was barely going to like, I couldn't go to when I was in York, I would go to the cinema like all the time. But you go to London, like good luck trying to afford it because you just can't even like like I wanted to do Barbieheimer, the Barbie Oppenheimer thing. I wanted to do that because I thought it'd be like a lot of fun, like doing it all bill in one day. It would be really great. Couldn't afford it. I couldn't afford to do one of them, and I just chose the Barbie movie in the end because I really wanted to watch it. But it's just even like little things as well. Like you have to like dip in and out of your overdraft, and that really, my credit score took a pretty big hit. I mean, it didn't take a massive hit; it only dropped a couple of points, but um, I've managed to recover it now since moving
Hmm.
back to York. But yeah, and it's just miserable. It's miserable. You feel very lonely and just really, and even when you do go out and stuff, you struggle meeting new people because you feel isolated. You feel
Yeah, you get the
you
impression
want
that
to.
nobody wants to talk to you.
Yeah, exactly. Like when I went to the Thursday event, I got that impression. Even though there were people, there were people who were clearly talking to. I did talk to some people during the Thursday events though, which were really nice. But I'm going to try to go into a few more of those next year because they do sound really
Hmm.
fun. But there were at points, certain events where I just felt isolated and felt like I couldn't engage with people, because it was all work, 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 and then I was quite lucky. I would get weekends off quite regularly, but with my job. But even then, it was like, what's the point? I can't do anything.
Hmm.
Like it's a fucking king's what was it, coronation, which I didn't really care about, but everyone was going out and celebrating, and I was like, I would have loved to have joined in, but um, not that I care, not that I'm not that big, not that I'm not that into the royal family because I'm not. Like I
Hmm.
don't hate them, I just don't care about them. But just seeing the celebrations and stuff like that, it's like I really want to get involved in that, but I can't do it. I really wanted to do London Pride again, but guess what? Even though I was living there, I couldn't do it because one, I couldn't afford it, and two, I'd have surgery around that time, so I was still recovering from that. But even if I wasn't recovering from that, I still wouldn't do it because
Yeah.
it's like, what's the point? Like, I can't afford it. It's too expensive. It's really fucking expensive. And it's like I want to do Manchester and Leeds Pride as well, but guess what? Guess what? No money. I can't do that. And again, like, it's just like it just feels so it's lonely. It's a very lonely city. Nobody does anything in London because nobody can do anything in London because nobody can afford to do anything in London because it's so fucking expensive. And I just don't understand how one city can be that expensive. It's like I wanted to go to the theater, can't afford tickets because they're too expensive. I wanted to do you want to go out to your local pub, guess what? Too bad, you can't do that either. You want to go to a restaurant, you can't do that. You want to go on a date, guess what? You're gonna have to cancel that day, unfortunately, because you can't afford it unless you want to dip into your overdraft for like the 500th time this month. You've got people who are struggling so badly with their overdrafts as well. Like you've got people who have overdrafts of people that are like
Oh yeah,
£1,000 or £2,000 who have to extend it because they
can't
can't
afford
because
it.
it's
Yeah.
either can't afford it because they can't afford it, and then that leaves you into debt, and you have to pay.
Mm.
You can get out of it, like even if you get out of that shit, guess what? You're going straight back in because rent comes out, and it's like, oh god, it's just so bad. And like I know people who work for like law enforcement, like people like training to be lawyers, right?
Oh yeah.
Lawyers, like you'd think that a lawyer would get paid abundance of money, like a lot of money. Like if you're a lawyer, like you'd think that if you're a lawyer, you'd be able to afford to live in London. Guess what? Most of the lawyers I know can't afford to pay their rent. They can't afford to pay their bills. They're struggling just as badly
That's
as
right.
anybody else. And I've met people, and I know people who are lawyers who have said, if I can do what I do anywhere else in the world, I would do it. Like and not be in London because it's
Yeah.
expensive. I
Exactly.
had
Yeah.
a friend who she very nearly gave up living in London. She was nearly made homeless because she couldn't get a law job or anything else. Eventually, she was able to sort herself out, but it's you just can't do anything in London. You just can't do anything there. You just can't do anything. Like, what can you do in London? Oh well, yeah, you can go out once a month. Oh wow, that's cool. That once a month, like, guess, but like, what's the point in that? Like, what shouldn't surely you be able to do multiple things a month? You should be able to do multiple things a month, like not just one thing a month. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean. Like one thing is in
Yeah,
like literally just like that's the only time you can do anything that doesn't involve going to work or
yeah,
being in your flat. That's what you mean by
yeah,
that.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
exactly.
that should not be how people should live. That's ultimately the bottom line of it. And it's really
Yeah,
frustrating that I mean, it's a really, really massive problem in London as well, but it is actually a problem in a lot of
mm,
places, like and in multiple countries as well, because the cost
yeah.
of because of all these cost of living crisis and the economies in these countries are just terrible, and then also
Oh
the
yeah,
fact as well that wealth in particular in these countries is so like vastly different and unstable. Yeah, I mean it's just really fucked up to be honest with you. So it's just
yeah,
like
exactly.
it's just a
Yeah,
frustration of society, unfortunately, and I think a lot of people don't realize that the only way that that can happen is if you are very, very lucky to not
yeah,
be in those positions. A lot of people do not take luck into that factor, which is what frustrates me as well. Like
mm,
I'm very lucky to have lived where I've lived, to have like parents who are very financially stable, who have helped me in times where I've not had the necessary finances to get through my own
yeah,
financial problems. And
yeah,
yeah, like I am lucky in that regard, and a lot of people aren't, unfortunately, and don't have that kind of luck that
yeah.
I do. So most important thing is to never take that for granted.
Oh no, definitely not. Do not take that shit for granted because yeah, it'll bite you in the ass. Let's just
Oh,
say
very
that
much yes.
it'll bite you straight in the ass, and it's just sad because it's like I felt like I wasn't living my life. I feel um, like I was just wasted. Like
Well,
I'm
it's
28 now. I'm gonna be
it's
29.
dehumanizing.
Yeah.
Ultimately, yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna be 29 next month, and it's like I wasted. I just feel like so much time in London was just wasted, like me just sitting on my ass, not doing anything. Because what can I do, and like I had friends in London, yeah, sure, but I can't see them because one, I can't afford to see them. My sister, one of my siblings, my sister lives in London, and I couldn't go see her because one, I couldn't afford to see her, and but also because it's so work. Schedules don't line up well, and you're so overworked and overdrained. You just do you even have the energy to do anything else other than like nothing when your days off? I don't think so. I don't think so.
No, exactly. Yeah, you have made a really good point there. Sucks,
Yeah.
man.
It really does. Yeah, it really, really does. And I just feel I'm glad I'm back in York because in York, I feel like I can do stuff again. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I went to the Manchester Christmas markets for like the first time last year, and it was really fun. I really loved it. I'm going to go back next year because may as well. I only bought the food though. I only go to those things for the food. I can't lie. The food is really good. Food's really
Oh,
good.
that's good. Yeah,
Yeah.
lovely.
Yeah. Let's get, and it was at this point as well when I just moved back in. So I did move out of London eventually around August because at this point I was too expensive. I was feeling really lonely. I just felt like I didn't have a life
Hmm.
anymore, and I ended up just moving back with my parents again because and just living the rest of my tenancy. out of their place, because it was one of those things where it's like, what's the point? Like, I don't have a life. I'm not living it, and it just made me really. It didn't affect me mentally. I would. It affected me mentally, not too, but not like too badly. Do you know what I mean? Like, not
Yeah.
like to the point where I'm like, oh, I'm depressed all the time and stuff like that. Um, Definitely not as bad as 2018. I'd say 2018 was like the worst. Yeah, mentally draining for me easily. But it definitely affected my mood and everything. And it was one of those things where it's like, I'm not living my life. So what's the point of me living here? So I just thought I might just move back with my parents and try to have some sort of a life with down their end in Wales.
Yeah.
Rather, do you know what I mean?
No, exactly. Yeah, I
Uh,
mean that's the way you should do it. If you're lucky enough to be in that position, there's nothing wrong with doing it. Like if
no,
you
it's
need
not,
that
no.
to have a reset and to hopefully get your life on a better track, it's worth it in the end of the day.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't have to. I had to. I had to sign back up to I had to sign back up to universal credits, and it was just really bad. Don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with universal credit or
No, of
anything like
course
that.
not.
I just don't.
It's a vital service that a lot of
No,
people
yeah.
do rely on who can't physically work,
Oh no,
or are in rough
exactly.
spots where they do need that little bit of extra income to make sure they can live.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the whole thing of itself is pretty bad because of how the government has treated it and everything, and
Well,
or
yeah, it's
mistreated.
just the
it.
usual, isn't it?
Yeah,
With conservative governments um, not liking poor people and working class people,
yeah,
so they want to give them as few
yeah,
options as possible.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and yeah, and that's pretty much it. Why I left, why I ended up leaving like almost halfway through my tenancy because it was just like there's no point in me staying here. Too expensive. Felt very lonely as well. Felt like I couldn't see anybody or wasn't able to see anybody, and it sucks. It did feel like I'd been. It felt like I'd been ripped off in a way. Like like you know what I mean. Like I wasn't seeing my mates either, and I was living with two of them because both of them were either working really long hours,
Mm.
and one of them ended up having to stay at his girlfriend's place constantly because he worked in Canary Wharf and she lived in Canary Wharf, so it just felt more convenient for him. And I'm just like, this was not really what I was hoping for. I was
No,
hoping to live with my
exactly.
mates
Yeah.
a long time. In the end, we all got ripped off in a way. Like all three of us, we all got ripped off. Well, we literally did as well. The apartment was a rip off. But yeah, it just felt like a massive rip off. And yeah, it was just really a really sad time, a really depressing time. I'm not going to write off 2023 as a bad year. I would say it was very hit and miss,
Mm.
very hit and miss. But yeah, yeah, that's why I ended
Yeah,
up leaving London early in
and
life.
I think you're okay to feel, like personally, like feel quite bad about that stuff happening because it's something that does happen to a lot of people, unfortunately. And I don't want people out there to realize that those situations are not things that you should have to deal with. You know what I mean? That doesn't make
Mm.
your life better. It's
Yeah,
there to make your life not only more inconvenient, but to stress you out, to make you feel horrible and miserable. It's no wonder that a
yeah,
lot of people these days are, like a lot of terrible things are happening at the moment, and it's because
mhm,
people have just reached the end of their rope in terms of a lot of
yeah,
things, and you can see why people have resorted to very extreme measures to ever do that stuff, and it does suck. It really does.
yeah. Exactly. It really does suck. Yeah. Um, but let's get on to let's get off this feeling of loneliness.
Oh,
But let's go on to a topic that I think is going to piss both of us off, being from the north. Let's talk about the upper class,
we should
or
we should
the posh,
we should point out
basically.
we are both working class people.
Yeah,
I don't necessarily hate the upper classes, but let's just say they definitely push their limits. Some of them. And granted, this is a
yeah,
very small group of people I specifically think about. In my mind, personally, I mean a very very small number, literally 1%. But there are definitely
mm,
some people who are from like upper middle class to
yeah,
the upper classes as well that do definitely
yeah,
think that they're of a class so high above regular people that they do
yeah,
definitely annoy me at times. But yes,
yeah. Um, yeah. I just hate posh people. I can't lie. I
that's
just
fine.
hate posh
Yeah,
people.
you're free to
Uh,
not like them. You don't have to like anyone.
yeah, yeah. They so there was this video, there was this Instagram reel before 2023 came to an end, where this guy was talking about how posh culture is essentially ruining London and how it's essentially full up of these, posh rich twats
Yeah,
have trust funds, who and the working class are just being
being driven out,
ignored
yeah, and ignored.
out.
Because they
Yeah,
want that is the goal of London, is to remove the working class people that still live in the city centre, to remove them
yeah,
outside, so that it becomes solely about the upper classes.
yeah,
That they
exactly.
can just spend money there as much as they want to, and then all the workers that they don't want to interact with can just live on the outside of the city. It's the same thing
Mhm.
that goes on happens in Paris and a lot of other European cities. It's really fucking annoying.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, and then
yeah,
what doesn't help as well is that a lot of these places in London, like, well, this is also the reason why rents are so high there as well, is that a lot of places are bought by rich people, not just rich British people, but rich people around the world, are then bought and then are left
yeah,
empty for large periods of time. Like, there's a lot of Russian oligarchs that own a lot of buildings that they literally
yeah.
just keep empty. And and
Mhm.
maybe like once a year they come round and like have like a bunch of people stay there. They don't even rent it out or anything. It's really frustrating.
Mhm.
Yeah, and it's just stuff like that can make you maybe a little bit resentful of people who have a lot of money,
Yeah, exactly.
and maybe in some regards too much money, as I would always refer to it as.
Yeah, and it was just it's the way that it's handled as well, like the fact that in the creative arts, which is the industry I was trying to get into, a lot of people who work in those industries are obviously you've got people who are working class who work in those industries like camera operators and stuff, but they're all freelance people. They're like
A
people who are
lot of them
struggling to
are. It's
survive.
usually like the directors who usually have like a permanent
Yeah,
position, yeah,
yeah, or like the 1% who are able to like make it a
or
living
or
properly and
buy
like
the way in, or like yeah, or
yeah,
have the means to do nothing but that job because they have like already got an
yeah,
income from like a family member or whatever,
yeah,
and they can afford to live in London without having to worry about being homeless.
yeah, exactly, yeah. And it's just bad.
Oh
And
yeah,
it's
no,
like
it's terrible. It's generally
yeah,
terrible.
and also like I mean, posh people are so weird and stuck up, and it's
I
like I
think that's
remember,
what's so fucking strange though, is that they're all just weird. Like, I've met a few
yeah,
people who are like relative. Some of them aren't. Like, I've met some people who have like come from like relatively good wealthy backgrounds who are just normal, and that's fine. That's fine.
yeah,
That can come from
yeah,
just their parents just maybe at one stage they weren't rich and they were working class and have very luckily managed to be in a position where they're not anymore, but have
yeah,
remembered that
yeah,
it's like, oh, there was a time when I wasn't that, and I don't really want my kids to grow up that way. But then there's other people who haven't learned that lesson. um but the few that are the people who aren't like that are very
yeah.
weird.
The ones who are literally born into a life of privilege and
Yeah,
uh,
it's
yeah,
really annoying because they're people who don't have to deal with a lot of the struggles that other people do, and yet they act as if they do struggle. It's really
yeah,
weird. Like, they act as
yeah,
if their life is like really difficult, and it's like, well, no, it's not in comparison to what most people have to go through. It really isn't.
yeah. And like during the Instagram reel I was watching, the clips of like posh people just being complete and utter twats. Like there was one guy who was like, they was filming this club, this like exclusive club for members only. It was like, shout out to all my dudes and dudettes with your trust funds, and it's like,
Oh,
shut up,
that's funny. That might just be bait,
God,
though. That's a lot of things I think people don't
no.
realize. This is something about more about the internet, really. That a lot of that, he probably posted that because he knew it would rile people up. Like, I think it's
Mm,
just funny. At the end of the day, it's really weird, and it does obviously. It's trying to poke at me, and
yeah,
in a
and then
specific way, and I'm like, nah, I'm not biting on it. I know that that's a joke.
yeah,
There's more.
yeah,
There's more. The problem isn't the individuals for me. It's more that our society's geared around those people. That,
yeah,
like, and that's also like in terms of like our governments and the way the policies that they pass through have
yeah,
are more beneficial towards people who have like a ridiculous amount of wealth. And like, for instance,
yeah,
like tax, for instance, is like it's more disproportionately aimed towards people like me and you, working class people, than it
yeah,
is to people who have got a lot of wealth, because it's wealth that they believe should be protected. Where it's really like, but there's a point when you kind of think, does anyone really need that much money? If it's like, this is like, I'm talking about your billionaires, for instance, you
yeah,
know,
yeah, exactly,
like,
yeah,
do they really need to have the wealth of a country? Or more than
yeah,
most countries in some cases, you know what I mean? It's like, you don't really need that. What are they using it for? Not really using it for anything. Buy another
mm,
yacht. I
yeah,
mean, you've already got one. You don't need two of them.
yeah,
You
but
don't even need one.
they like they like to flex, don't they? It's like,
Well,
oh, oh,
some do, but I think that's all it's used for, isn't it? It's just about flashing, and it's like it's
yeah,
so hollow that it's like every time I see
exactly.
someone do that, I'm just like, ah, man, they must really not be having a good time. They must literally feel like
Mm,
that's the only way they can get people to notice them because most people really just don't care. You know what I mean? Most
yeah,
people get by fine
yeah,
with what it is,
yeah,
and it's like,
yeah.
do what they can to contribute to society, but then, you've got this group of people who uh, can't contribute to society literally because of their wealth. Yeah.
Mm. It's yeah. It's I think the problem with posh people in the upper class is that they and posh culture in general is that they seem to live in their own little
Oh,
worlds. They don't
absolutely, yeah. I agree with that.
reality, and they just like, "Who? Yes." And it's like during that video, one there was this video of this one girl, this could have been bait or something, I don't know, where she literally was like she was walking up the stairs of the tube. She was on the tube and she was walking up the escalator on the tubes, and stuff like that. And she just randomly shouts out, "Ruh, where's my backy?" And I was like, "Oh my god, don't even." First of all,
Uh,
there is nothing more green to the ears than a posh person saying "rah" or trying to be hip or trying to be cool. Like,
I mean,
shut
a
up.
lot of these people wanna connect to other people, and they find that, that's how they can connect to people. It doesn't
Yeah,
work. I mean, you with an accent like that, you'd be spotted a mile away. It doesn't matter how hard you try. I,
yeah, and then you try and like point out like their privilege and stuff, and they just go, "Oh, well, you're just hating on me. You're just jealous." And it's like, "I've worked so hard for my wealth," and it's like, "Oh, what being born into daddy's rich family? Yeah, yeah, mate. Yeah, you've done so hard work there."
Yeah, I mean, that's ultimately what it is really, isn't it? And then it kind of
Mm,
impresses me that they try
yeah,
so hard to keep that wealth as much as possible when really it's like, but what are you gonna do with it? Like, you're not gonna
yeah,
spend it on
exactly.
anything that's
What are you gonna do with it?
worthwhile. You're not gonna use it to start a business, are you?
No,
Or
exactly.
like to use it to yeah, you're not gonna use it for that. You're using it just to buy things for yourself, which,
Yeah,
fair enough. If
mm,
you've got the disposable income to do it, buy whatever you want. We live in a capitalist society. You can do what you want, but
yeah, exactly.
um,
Yeah,
yeah, that's kind of it, really. I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, it's something that I think a lot of people more so have become. Well, I think people have always been aware of it, but they're becoming less and less tolerant of it
yeah,
in a wider perspective because they feel like it's just sort of like, right, well, we're not really getting anything out of this anymore. Like,
yeah,
we need that
yeah,
to
yeah,
change, which is why,
yeah, exactly.
which leads into where the political landscape of this country might change in the next few years. Not
Mm,
necessarily for the better, but it might be slightly better than what we've dealt with. It's
yeah, exactly.
hopefully,
Hopefully,
but I don't really have
hopefully,
much confidence in the next party that I'll get in, and I will get
yeah,
in. That I can guarantee.
mm,
That's my 2024 prediction. The Labour Party will win the next election. I will be
yeah.
surprised if
No,
they don't.
yeah. I'll be surprised. I'll be surprised if we get stuck with the Tories for like
I
four
just
more
no
years. Like,
nobody's after the Tories
no
anymore.
one,
It's 5 years as well. Sorry.
5 years. Yeah, no, no one's gonna.
No.
I hope no, no. Surely, people don't do it. People vote anyone
Oh,
else.
there
Anyone
will be
else?
some people who will just vote for the
Yeah,
Tories because that's their party. But
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
that's it really.
And I think another thing with with posh people in the upper class is that like they literally do look down on working class guys
So
like you and me
some
as
can,
dirt.
some can. I've
Like,
met some that haven't. I'm trying to keep this as impartial as possible, just to be
oh
a
yeah,
little bit more
like
understanding
not
that
all,
in
yeah, not all, of them,
no, yeah,
but
exactly. Like there are individuals who do understand their position and they have like consciousness of where they are
yeah,
in their in society, and they go, "Oh, well, I
yeah,
don't necessarily think that's acceptable. I'm not going to use that position to,
mm,
exacerbate somebody." And make their lives worse than they already are. But there are other people who are
mm,
aware of it and then go, "Well, I don't really care." Like
yeah.
that is a truth of it at the end of the day.
Mm. Like I remember I was in a bar in Soho for a bit. We were out for a mate's birth. A friend of mine was going out for her friend's birthday, and she asked me along. So we went to this bar in Soho, and I was dressed quite casually. I was in skinny jeans, leather shoes, a nice collared shirt, and a leather jacket. So I was dressed quite casually. And then there was two guys in front of me. They were dressed in suits. They were clearly quite businessy type guys. So I was standing there, had my arms crossed and everything, just waiting for to get to the counter to get a drink. And then one of them like turned to me and just gave me this really snarling look where like he was disgusted that I was there. He was like, "What the fuck are you doing here? Like, what you and your kind be being here?" And it's like, what the fuck was that look for? Do you know what I mean? Like, dude, just I think he could have like smelt the working class off of me, like from a mile away,
Who knows, man?
something.
Some people are weird.
He's like, "Oh, look at these people," and it's like, Jesus Christ, man, what these
Ah,
people?
you can't help it
Like,
with
I
some people. The worst thing is they that just comes more from a profession than it does like,
yeah,
the wealth. They feel like they're in this profession that allows them to act that way. You don't go out just dressed in a suit unless you generally have got a profession that means that you
mm,
wear that generally speaking. So I feel like it's just yeah, that's all it is really. What are you gonna do?
yeah,
What are you
exactly.
gonna do with people? Just leave it. Just be like, yeah, whatever, mate. I don't really care.
Yeah, yeah. Just leave them. I guess just leave them
Yeah, it's
be.
just move
Allow
on.
me.
It's like you might not
Yeah,
like me being here, but you can't stop me from being here. So it's like, fuck off
yeah,
then.
yeah. I'm allowed in there in a bar as much as the
Yeah,
next guy,
of course
really.
you are.
To
Of course you are.
yeah. And yeah, so that comes to our final point, point number 11. Coming back to York, I've moved back to York in
He's back.
November 2nd. I'm back, and I couldn't be happier. It's so good to be back up north. It's so good to just be able to live somewhere where I can actually just live my life. Now I can get on with my life. I can do whatever the hell I want. I can, because I'll actually have the financial freedom to do whatever I want, and the financial capabilities to do it. And it's just one of those things where would I consider moving to London again? Absolutely fucking not. It's like it's not for me.
Yeah. But
Tried
you've
it.
got the one advantage that I think a lot of people don't know. Like I've never lived in London, so but I know I don't want to live
Yeah,
there, but you've experienced it. And you can
yeah,
say for
exactly.
100% certainty that it's like no, it is not for you.
No, it's not for me. No, it's definitely not
No.
for me. And it sucks, but it's that's just what
Yeah, you
happens.
tried. That's what's most important.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, I was still getting interviews for film and TV traineeships and internships, but I wasn't getting any, and I just thought it's really not worth it if I have to like struggle
Yeah, if you
financially
have to
just to
struggle
like
financially and then wait several potential
yeah.
years just to get your foot in the door, it's not worth it.
It's really not worth it. And that's the other thing as well. Like I would say, I mean, York's just better. Like it's smaller. It's still got loads packed into it. You can do loads of stuff in York. You can actually afford to do stuff in York
Yeah.
than you'd be
Though
able
I
to in
will say
London.
I do feel like York is moving towards a touristy trap place. It
Yeah,
definitely since I've lived here for like nearly 8 years, I want to say now. And when I first moved here, it was definitely not like it is now. And I personally preferred it before then because it felt like it was a
yeah,
place geared towards not just tourists, but people who lived there as well. But it definitely has started
yeah,
to move more towards it being a touristy trap place. Like there's still not many live music venues in York, which is really
yeah,
frustrating. I would really like to go and see some live music, and there are some. Don't get me wrong, but they're the only
yeah,
places in York, so it means every time there's a music night, it is packed. I'd like it
yeah,
spread out a little bit, so I'd like more themed nights as well. Would be really nice in certain places.
yeah, yeah. No, I get that. I mean, I'm still
Oh
happy to
yeah,
be
no,
back in
don't get me
York.
wrong. I mean, I like York. I
Yeah,
wouldn't have stayed here for as long as I did if I didn't like it.
yeah, exactly. And yeah, I think it's just happy to be back in somewhere up north. It's happy to have cheesy chips again. Like
Yeah, man,
apparently cheesy chips is like
you told me about it multiple times. You really struggled to find it, which
Che
is an
mate, cheese
absolute
chips is so
disgrace and
hard.
is a pretty good enough reason not to move to London in itself.
Yeah, exactly, like, don't move to York. If you like cheesy chips, don't move to London because you won't be able to find them anywhere. Like, there are places that sell them, but you've really got to hunt to, like, find it, and it's just really annoying, and it's like, "No, I'll allow it. I'll" yeah, and yeah, so overall, with London, it's just London is just not a good place to live in anymore. Maybe at some point, like, obviously the '80s and the '90s, it was probably good to live in.
Yeah,
I'm not too sure.
maybe. I think London suffered a lot of the problems it has for a while. Um,
Yeah.
it's definitely feels like something that has just gotten worse and worse over the decades, but
Oh,
is
yeah.
the fault of you know
Yeah.
decades of like people just exploiting that place for what it is. And we will
Mm.
say, as just to kind of be a little bit, if you've got like, if you've managed to find a place that you like in London, if you've got a career that you're looking for specifically, you've secured yourself a job, London might be worth going to. Just for the, but only
Yeah.
if you've got those reasons. If you want to move there on a whim, I'd heavily consider not doing it. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I would say. I would say this: only move to London if you absolutely have to. Like if you put on an
Yeah,
internship or a
like an
training
internship
or
or a job, or you've got like a career that you can
yeah,
start there, then yeah, absolutely.
yeah,
It's at
yeah,
least worth trying, even if you live in a house share for a bit. It's at
yeah.
least worth trying.
Like, yeah, if you've got something lined up that you know for a fact you cannot do it anywhere else, it has to be in London. It's either London or nowhere else. Then
Yeah,
yes, move to yeah, move to
that's it.
London. Do it.
And even if you
But
don't like living in London, gain the experience you get from that profession there, and then you
yeah,
can move to wherever afterwards. It doesn't matter after that
yeah.
stage.
But if you don't have anything like that, don't move to
No, I
London.
wouldn't. No,
It's
you
not
need a
worth
damn
it.
good reason to move.
Yeah, maybe at a point there was a there you know, there was like a point there was like moving to London was good,
Yeah,
but
there was
it's not
definitely a
anymore.
time period where, especially if you were a creative, like maybe 60s and 70s was a really good time to live in London,
Yes, exactly.
where
Yeah,
like rent was still like, more expensive than it was in other places, but it was relatively affordable. And there was a lot of creative industries that were starting up there, and like there was a lot of easier way to get your foot in the door. Now it's way more difficult than it's ever been.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's just uh nah, just no. It's just one of those things where yeah, I wouldn't recommend it unless you absolutely have to. But if you can do whatever you want to do anywhere else, don't
Yeah,
move to London.
that's definitely what I would say is the advice.
Yeah,
Like
there's other places like Leeds is a pretty decent
Leeds,
city. I've been to Leeds.
Manchester, you can try.
Man, it's so good.
I'd suggest
I love
Edinburgh
Man.
as well, but Edinburgh's still really expensive.
Mm.
Newcastle
Never
is also a good one if you want to try.
I've never been to Newcastle. I need to go there at some
Ah,
point.
we'll go to Newcastle.
Yeah, go on out on Newcastle. Get on the
Oh,
town, get
mate,
on the
A
drinks.
night out in Newcastle is fucking like goddamn. that's a
Yeah,
that's a night
I can
out and a
imagine.
half.
That's a night out. Yeah, I can imagine that. Yeah, so that is it. That's all about my ramblings on why you should not move to London. If you're somebody who loves London and you like
Yeah,
living
that's
there,
fine.
fair enough.
Like whatever.
But it wasn't for me, and I've got a feeling that it's going to get worse and worse for a lot of other people who they want to aspire to live there and who are unsure
Yeah,
or
just be
whatever.
aware of what you're getting into. That's all I'd ever say for
Yeah,
people moving there.
like flat out, just do your research. Look into like actually do your research into it. Like don't just yeah. It's a tough one. It's a tough one, but I would not recommend it unless you absolutely have to do it. Um, but yeah, so
That's
that is it for this
that's the year
episode.
done.
That's the
Happy New
year
Year,
done.
everyone.
Yeah, Happy New Year. This is the end of season one of my isolation podcast. We've got plenty of changes coming up for next year. Quite a few
We're
changes.
finally
We'll
going to get that
update you.
tiger that we always wanted.
Oh yeah, the tiger. He's definitely coming. The tiger's definitely being made. We're calling him Charlie because that's a good name
It's
for
a
a
pretty good
tiger.
name, yeah. I would have
Yeah, and
called
yeah,
him Babu, but okay.
yeah. But yeah, everyone, that is it for now. Thank you so much for tuning in for this past year, for all of you that have managed to do so. And here's to a exciting 2024. And we'll see you when we see you next time.
Goodbye.